Okay, we have a quorum, so if I can call the meeting to order and remind members again to ensure that the volume on all tablet devices is off, and the quickest way to do this is to press function and F8. Could remind members, isn't anyone in the public? Oh, they are. Could remind members and those in the public gallery to switch off mobile phones, as they may interfere with the sound recording system, and I emphasise reminding members on that. And this meeting will be on camera. The following members have offered their apologies. We have just the one from David Hilditch. And are members aware of any other apologies? No. Okay. Which brings us then into the inquiry into issues around emergency exiting plans, including their impact on stadium safety or stadium capacity for the redeveloped Casement Park Stadium. And we're going to receive a briefing from the Safety Technical Group. I think last week we had said about declarations of interest that we
forward every week.
Every week, just do it at the start.
Any new relevant ones?
If people declared an interest previously, that will be simply carried forward to today.
There's only been any new ones.
I don't think there aren't any new ones.
No.
Right. Okay.
Chair, do we have any advice on the legal advice that was being sought?
No, we're coming to that in a moment. Sorry, just one of the first things here on this matter is that the committee had agreed to seek legal advice regarding the issue of a potential conflict of interest. This advice has not yet been received, as the committee is waiting on additional information being provided to allow this to happen. Once the legal advice has been received, a briefing and closed session will be scheduled.
Chairman, could I raise just one issue in relation to those that made a representation last week? You made it very clear that you reminded witnesses that they are obliged to declare any relevant financial or other interests in relation to today's business. That's quoting from the minute of the meeting. My understanding, Mr. Kieran McGurk is a member of the GAA, Lava GAA, listed as a member, and in my recollection, he did not declare that. Could we have some further advice on that, please, as to what can be done to clarify that issue?
Could you pass that over, just, please? Thank you. Yeah, just for the record, then, it's what has been tabled there is a membership list of Lally GAA. Seems to be off their website, and then inside also with it there's a picture of Mr. McGurk with members of Lally GAA, and it's quite clear, well, it's him. Couldn't mistake it. So he seems to be quite involved there, and he did not mention that. So can we get some advice just on how we deal with those?
We'll write to him and ask.
Well, can I just say on the matter, Chair, it's for people themselves to declare whether they've got a matter of interest. Whether he's a member of the GAA or not is up to him. I don't think it's an issue that we need to look into too much.
But simply a matter that's being noted.
It can be noted, but it is not. People declare their own declarations of interest. It's not for us to investigate whether they have a conflict. I'll just say to you, I think it's a red herring, and I'd save a bit of time if we just didn't deal with it.
Okay. Next point. That's been William.
Yeah. Could I just raise the issue that Mr. Rahoshin raised there about the issue that he raised last week and the letter that Peter Hall sent to Sport and I. Very clear that issue last week was a red herring, Mr. Stunt, a distraction to take away from, in my view, to take away from the evidence that was being presented to this committee by Belfast City Council. It's very clear when you look at the reply, the fulsome reply that comes from the Sport NI leadership, from Mr. Hartness. It's very clear in that the outline business case was approved by DFP in March 2011. Sport NI was subsequently notified of the DFP approval by Mr Edgar Jardine, the then Deputy Permanent Secretary in DCAL, in March 2011. Not by you, by Edgar Jardine. As such, because it continues, the design considerations for the studio were very outlined in as is normal at the stage of outline business case. It's noted that the outline business case did identify limitations, constraints and challenges relating to Casement Park site, refers to pages 51 and 52 of the outline business case. Subsequent designs for Casement Park, dated the 13th of May 2013, illustrate that the constraints of the site for emergency exiting were understood by all. So, when you look at that, then you have the letter from Nick Hartness making it very clear who signed off on behalf of DCAL. The information was passed to the Department of Finance personnel, and then there's Mr. Jardine's letter to Eamon McCartan, which is dated the 30th of March 2011. The Department submitted the outline business case for regional stadium development to DFP for approval on the 21st of October 2010, and I am pleased to confirm DFP formally approved the outline business case on the 7th of March 2011. Scope would exist to host other events, makes then reference to the 3 stadia. Scope would exist for other events, e.g. concerts, and provide retail and office accommodation at the 3 stadia. So the reply from Mr Hartness, coupled with the letter that Mr Jardine sent at that time, makes it very clear who signed off. Clearly this was a stunt. This was an attempt to remove you as chair, and I think this is blowing that whole argument out of the water, and I think we should move on.
Well, that will be passed on, that correspondence will be passed on to the legal people who are looking at the matter. Yes?
Chair, I reject any inference of a stunt from last week. And simply trying to establish whether or not this inquiry has had information withheld from it, including from yourself as your former role as Minister.
Yeah, and I've said there was no information. That's fine. But we get the legal advice in due course.
Still withholding information, but Chair.
Sorry?
You are still withholding the information that you might have.
Well, I've said I haven't any, so what's the matter? We'll move on then. Thank William for the clarification and referring us to the letter from Nick Hartness. Advise members, there was also correspondence received from Mr Carl Southern, who gave evidence last week, and that was in relation to the tabled paper and also about one of the lines of questioning, including the role of the chairperson. Advise members there that the clerk is going to reply to Mr Southern. There was also hard copy table received from Kieran McGurk, which is a one-page there, if I can find, thank you, in which he, a couple of points were not considered in my comments for the record, and then those are just about his background and role and developing the programme. So we'll have that for information as well from him. Members agreeable to including that in the that correspondence in the inquiry evidence.
Great.
Thank you. We also have now the hard copy table received from Sport NI, which is that's the one that William was referring to. I'll just read through this. The committee wrote to Sport NI on the 30th of June seeking information relating to the approval sign-off process for the outline business case and the final business case for Casement Park. In Sport NI's response, they indicate that the outline business case was commissioned by them in September 2009, and FGS McClure Waters was appointed to assist with this business case. The drafts provided by FGS McClure Waters were reviewed by Sport NI, DCAL and the governing sports bodies before a final outline business case was submitted to DCAL in July 2010. They passed it on then to DFP for approval in October 2010. That's the point that Mr Humphrey was referring to. Sport NI has provided a letter from the then Permanent Secretary, Mr Edgar Jardine, informing Sport NI that DFP approved the outline business case in March 2011. Sport NI was then involved with preparing the operational business plans for the 3 stadia in line with the DFP approval conditions. And following the transfer of powers from Sport NI to Decal, Sport NI had no involvement with the final business case. And that letter would then also be included in the inquiry folder. Could I refer you to correspondence, hard copy tabled, received from the Minister regarding the future leadership and management of Sport NI? This was also emailed to members yesterday evening. Press release which was issued yesterday afternoon was only sent to the committee this morning. This has also been hard copy tabled for members' attention. The Minister refers to a number of whistleblowing allegations within Sport NI relating to a number of serious issues. Following the publication of a report by the Department of Education and Decal Head of Internal Audit, the Minister met with the Sport NI Board. Prior to the meeting, the Minister accepted 9 resignations from the 14 board members. The Minister has undertaken to appoint an interim executive leadership team led by Mr Arthur Scott, who will take on the responsibilities of Sport NI CEO. This team will implement the recommendations outlined by internal audit. The Minister recognises this will help in the short to medium term and that ongoing work has to be taken to ensure that Sport NI is strengthened in the long term. That's what she has said. Now, we'll be getting a briefing from the Minister later on today. Yeah. She has found time in her diary when we asked her to come. She will be here between 2 and 3:30, and therefore it's important that we finish the final briefing this morning at 1:30 to allow members the opportunity for a comfort break and lunch. And members are asked to be mindful of that relatively short time frame when questioning members of the STG. William?
Yeah, Chair. I don't know, maybe you want to deal with this this afternoon.
Probably, yeah.
In relation to it. But for me, this press release actually raises more questions than it provides answers, and I think it is very serious because it's very clear to me that this press release and the actions that the Minister has taken have actually deemed Sport NI no longer an arm's length body, but in fact an integral part of the Department of Culture, Arts and Leisure, and I think those are serious issues that we need to raise with it.
We will be speaking to the Minister this afternoon. We have an opportunity to put these points. I was somewhat surprised. I think I was informed this morning that there seems to be the case that, yes, thank you. In the statement, she says, I am also conscious that the membership of the Sport NI Board has been depleted through resignations, and I am examining how best to assist the Board through the challenge it faces. This is likely to include the co-option of a small number of people from across the Northern Ireland Civil Service onto the Board. This is an arm's length body, which is now going to be populated by the Minister without a normal recruitment process, because that would take a number of months, and people from the Civil Service. This is unprecedented, but we will come to that this afternoon. Okay. Brings us then to the inquiry into issues around emergency exiting plans, including their impact on stadium capacity for the redeveloped Casement Park Stadium. And we're going to have a briefing this morning from the Safety Technical Group. Whilst they're coming in, you will find amongst your papers that have been tabled today, 1, 2, 3, about 5 or no 6, whatever, 7 pages from that have been tabled by Mr. Scott for the meeting. You'll see it. There's the one with Brenda Hart's name at the top on the front. And we also have tabled the speaking note for the members of the STG who are with us this morning. So it's handy to have that. It makes it somewhat easier. We appreciate the folks coming this morning. We welcome you here. And the 4 people whom we have along this morning are Mr. Paul Scott, who's the chairperson of the Safety Technical Group. We also have Ms. Laura Strong, who's the technical officer in the Safety Compliance Group in Sport NI. We have Anthony McNally, who's the Chief Inspector in the PSNI, and Jeremy Cowan, Deputy Emergency Planning Officer in the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service. Members of the committee declaration of interest are being carried forward. If any of the witnesses have any relevant financial or other interests, they should declare these in relation to today's business. Thank you. It was agreed previously that Mr. Scott's evidence provided on the 30th of April would be included in the inquiry's papers, and therefore this evidence is not being presented again today. And if I could invite the officials to make an opening statement, and we have a copy in front of us here. I just say to members, if we're aiming to finish for for 1:30, that gives us 3 hours and 10 minutes. I will see how long the presentation takes, and then if members could bear that in mind when they're asking questions just around, so we give everyone an opportunity and a fair opportunity. We will be returning to all these things in the autumn, but I want to give people an opportunity today. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thank you. On behalf of this delegation from the Safety Technical Group, I would like to thank you for the invitation to address the committee. As with my previous appearance before the committee, the invitation was received less than a week prior to the meeting, and unfortunately the representative of the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service had a prior engagement and cannot attend on this occasion. A representative of the Police Service for Northern Ireland is involved in operational planning matters for the forthcoming weekend and is also unavailable to attend. I am, however, accompanied on this occasion by Chief Inspector Anthony McNally of the PSNI, who has been involved with the casement project for some time and attended the last meeting of the STG in November 2014. Also by Jeremy Cowan from the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service, a member of the STGs for the Three Stadia, and by Laura Strong, the Technical Officer of the Safety Compliance Unit at Sport NI, who is a member of the three STGs also. We are aware that the committee has been provided with evidence from a number of witnesses in recent weeks. Unfortunately, we have only recently had access to the transcripts of the meeting of the CAL Committee held on the 25th of June, when members heard evidence from Noel Malloy, the GAA, and representatives of the design team for Casement Park. We have only yesterday had access to the transcripts of the meeting of the CAL Committee held on the 2nd of July, when members heard evidence from Belfast City Council, Kieran McGurk and Carl Southern. With your permission, Chairman, I and each of the delegation will make an opening statement, and we will endeavour to answer any questions that you and the members may ask. We are aware of the content of some of the presentations and the responses to questions put to witnesses who have appeared before the committee in recent weeks, albeit there has been a limited time for this to provide a comprehensive review of these presentations. The STG, however, focuses on responding to design proposals, referencing these against recognised guidance and industry best practice, and advising DCAL accordingly. We would seek to remind members of the content of the Red Guide and the Green Guide and related documentation, and the reason for our concerns regarding the present design proposals. We would also endeavour to correct some of the assertions made by some witnesses with regard to what the STG have and have not agreed to, and also endeavour to refute alleged inconsistencies in the approach to the various STGs in relation to the proposals for Casement Park, Windsor Park, now the National Football Stadium, and Ravenhill, now the Kingspan Stadium. We have also noted some of the comments made about the STG and myself as the chair of the STG. However, we do not intend to respond to these comments, as the objective of the STG is to consider the design proposals with reference to safety of spectators attending events hosted at the venue, and advise DCAL accordingly. We therefore intend today to focus on safety-related issues with reference to recognised guidance. We previously stated that we had limited time to prepare for this meeting, and would therefore welcome the opportunity to provide a more detailed and comprehensive response, either in writing or at a future meeting of this committee. With your permission, Chairman, I will open the presentation. My name is Paul Scott, and members may remember me from my previous appearance before the committee on the 30th of April. My role with Sport NI and with the Safety Technical Group for Casement Park is as per my previous appearance. Information related to stadia safety is contained in the Guide to Safety at Sports Grounds, the 5th edition, known as the Green Guide, and the Northern Ireland Guide to Safety at Sports Grounds, known as the Red Guide. The author and custodian of the Green Guide is the Sports Ground Safety Authority, a public body that reports to the Department of Culture, Media and Sport in Great Britain. The Red Guide is based on the 4th edition of the Green Guide and was drafted by a working group chaired by Sport NI and issued on behalf of both the Department of Culture, Arts and Leisure, DCAL, and Sport Northern Ireland. Much of the content of both of these documents is broadly similar, and DCAL have advised that when reviewing the design proposals for the stadia, where differences in the content of the respective guides exist, then the higher standard should be adopted. As I advised the committee in April, it is possible to deviate from the contents of the Green Guide or the Red Guide. However, an equal or greater degree of safety must be provided, and this is stated in Section 1.7 of the Green Guide and in the introduction, Part G of the Red Guide. I will again outline the steps in assessing the safe capacity of a stadium as contained in Section 2.3 of the Green Guide and Section 1.3 of the Red Guide. There are 4 elements in the initial assessment. The assessment of the entrancing capacity, an assessment of the holding or viewing capacity, an assessment of the exiting capacity, and an assessment of the emergency exiting capacity. The final or safe capacity will be the lowest of the above, and this emphasises the importance of the emergency evacuation capacity. The calculation of each of these elements is based on the content of the guidance documents referred to before. Further reductions to the safe capacity may be imposed if there are problems with the S factor that relates to safety management issues and/or the P factor that relates to physical issues related to the condition and layout of the venue. Reductions may also be imposed if observations at fixtures played at the stadium or any stadium indicate that the entrancing arrangements, the holding arrangements, the exiting arrangements or the emergency evacuation arrangements do not work in practice. The STG were advised that following revisions, the design capacity for Casement Park was to be 38,000. Calculating the entrancing capacity. Guidance advises that the entrancing capacity is based on the 1 hour period prior to the commencement of a fixture, and that a maximum of 660 persons can access a venue via a turnstile in that hour. A venue with a capacity of 38,000 would therefore require a minimum of 58 turnstiles. Now, many larger GA fixtures, unlike other sporting fixtures, are preceded by a warm-up fixture that results in significant numbers of spectators being inside the venue more than 1 hour prior to the commencement of the main fixture. Recognising this and following discussions with the GAA and their design team, the STG were content for the entrancing period to be extended by 25% where a warm-up fixture preceded the main fixture. The proposals of the design team to provide 48 turnstiles was therefore accepted by the STG, provided a warm-up fixture preceded the main fixture. This would enable more frontage on the Andersonstown Road to be available for exit gates. This demonstrates that the STG will consider deviations to the guidance and will accept the deviations where they consider that an equal or greater degree of safety is achieved. This is not an example of an inconsistent approach to safety, as other witnesses have stated to the committee. Staging a warm-up match was not a condition imposed by the STG, but an option available to the GAA that they and their design team elected to pursue. The GAA and their design team could still have opted to provide 58 or more turnstiles for the stadium, which had a proposed capacity of 38,000, and not stage a warm-up fixture. Although other factors, calculating the viewing capacity. Although other factors such as the dimensions of the concourses and gangways should be considered, the holding capacity or viewing capacity of a stadium is largely based on the number of seats available and/or the number of spectators that can be accommodated in standing terraces that comply with recognised guidance. Discussions with the GAA indicated they wanted a stadium with approximately 40,000 seats, though a revised figure of 38,000 was later adopted. Following initial discussions with the GAA and their design team, it was considered that the proposals indicated that a holding or viewing capacity could be accommodated as per the design proposals. The STG, however, did have concerns regarding the provision of approximately 8,000 uncovered seats to the north end of the proposed stadium. We would refer the members to section 12.8 of the Green Guide and section 11.6 of the Red Guide, both of which state it is recommended that all seated accommodation be covered. We stated our concerns that if during periods of rain there would be the potential for spectators in this area to stand or seek shelter in the covered parts of the venue. Standing spectators are considered to occupy a greater linear dimension than seated spectators, and thus when occupying a full row of seats have either to stand at an angle with the tripping hazard in front of them, i.e. the seats from the row in front, and the potential for a progressive collapse, or they may spread out into the radial gangways which form part of the exiting route and the emergency evacuation route. Persistent standing has been a problem at some parts of some stadia in Great Britain for a number of years, with the issue being addressed at several venues by terms and conditions in a safety certificate as issued by the local authority. These terms and conditions require the venue operators to reduce the number of seats that can be sold in each row of the parts of the ground where persistent standing regularly occurs. The issue was discussed with the IFA and their design team regarding a part of their venue where persistent standing regularly occurs, and their design team included their design proposals included increasing the seat spacings from 500mm to 550mm centres in this area of the National Football Stadium. The GAA and their design team declined to adopt this option. It will therefore be important that the issues of persistent standing and of crowd migration are properly managed in the north end of the proposed Casement Park. Otherwise, there would be the potential for a reduction in the P factor or the S factor, and thus a reduction in the safe capacity for that area of the venue. The STG consider that recognised guidance should be followed as to endeavour to design out this potential problem. Witnesses have advised the committee that the STG have been inconsistent in addressing the issue of uncovered spectator accommodation, referring to the uncovered standing terraces at the Kingspan Stadium. Although, as noted above, the Green Guide and the Red Guide state that it is recommended that all accommodation be covered, similar advice is contained in both documents regarding standing viewing decks. However, the standing terraces are designed for standing. Seated viewing decks are not designed for this purpose, and thus presents a risk to spectators should persistent standing occur, and thus the potential for a reduction in the safe capacity of the uncovered area of the seating. This demonstrates a pragmatic approach to the issues at the respective venues rather than an inconsistent approach to spectator safety as alleged. Witnesses have also advised the committee that I, as the chair of the STG, had stated that standing accommodation would not be permitted at Casement Park. This is not the case. I was asked on more than one occasion by GAA officials if I regarded seated accommodation to be safer than standing accommodation. I advised that in my opinion, although standing accommodation was permitted, and indeed both the Green Guide and the Red Guide contain specific chapters regarding the arrangements that should be in place at standing viewing decks, I considered that seated accommodation was easier to manage. This is in line with section 13.1 of the Green Guide and section 12.1 of the Green Guide, both of which state standing accommodation is recognised as presenting a special safety problem at sports grounds. Wherever possible, the provision of safe seated accommodation for all spectators is recommended. The GAA agreed with my opinion and advised that they considered that fewer stewards were needed to manage seated spectator accommodation than for standing spectator accommodation. They further noted that increasingly more spectators, particularly families, were seeking seated accommodation at GAA fixtures. Calculating the exiting capacity. Section 10.1a of the Red Guide and Section 9.1 of the Green Guide and Section 9.1 of the Red Guide both state that management should ensure that there are a sufficient number of exits in suitable locations. Page 57, diagram 6.1 of the Green Guide and page 53 of the Red Guide also advise that outer circulation zones to sports grounds should be provided. It should be noted that approximately 72% of the exiting from the proposed Casement Park is located to the Andersonstown Road end of the venue. It is therefore very important that appropriate consideration was given as to how the exiting process would be undertaken. This resulted in several meetings involving members of the STG, members of the design team and members of the GAA. Following a number of proposal revisions, some crowd modelling exercises and some flow calculations for each of the various legs of each of the exiting routes, agreement was reached on the exiting proposals. I communicated this to DCAL on behalf of the STG by email. I will refer to these emails later. Calculating the emergency exiting capacity. Section 10 of the Green Guide and Section 9.9 of the Red Guide both state there is a difference between egress times and emergency evacuation times. Section 10.9 of the Green Guide and Section 9.9 of the Red Guide also state the maximum emergency evacuation time for sports grounds varies between 2.5 minutes and 8 minutes. The differential relates to the fire risk, and the STG accept that the proposed design of Casement Park presents a low fire risk, thus the maximum time of 8 minutes should be adopted, and this was the case at the National Football Stadium and the Kingspan Stadium. As I advised the committee in April, experts believe that during the exiting of a large event, if people are not in a free-flowing situation in an 8-minute period, they become agitated and panic sets in. Despite many reviews of the guidance documentation, experts still regard the figure of 8 minutes to be appropriate for the safe emergency egress of a sports ground. Section 10.9 of the Green Guide and Section 9.9 of the Red Guide state the emergency evacuation time is a calculation which, together with the rate of passage, is used to determine the capacity of the emergency exit system from the viewing accommodation to a place of safety or reasonable safety in the event of an emergency. The Green Guide defines a place of safety as a place within a building or structure where, for a limited period of time, people will have some protection from the effects of fire and smoke. This place is usually a corridor or stairway and will normally have a minimum of 30 minutes fire resistance to allow people to continue their escape to a place of safety. The Red Guide defines a place of comparative safety as a place where people can be safe from the effects of fire for 30 minutes or more, thus allowing extra time for them to move directly to a place of safety. The Green Guide defines a place of safety as a place away from a building in which people are in no immediate danger from the effects of fire, where the Red Guide describes or defines a place of safety as a place where a person is no longer in danger from fire or other emergencies. As stated above, the exiting distribution appears to make the venue unique, with neither the STG nor the design team being able to identify any other stadium of similar exiting design. In addition, the venue is serviced by only one arterial road, and there are not any outer circulation zones to the proposed stadium. It is therefore very important that there are robust emergency evacuation arrangements. The STG, and this is in contrast with the other two venues, have been unable to see how emergency exiting could be achieved safely and in compliance with recognised guidance. They have therefore consistently requested the emergency exiting strategy for the proposed venue since spring 2013. However, to date, this information has not been provided. The STG and others have continued to raise concerns with DCAL regarding these matters. It is noted that one of the witnesses has indicated to the committee that an emergency exiting strategy has been developed. The STG has not been provided with this document, and it should be forwarded to DCAL, who in turn can forward it to the STG for consideration. A witness has also advised the committee that the STG has been inconsistent in its approach to the use of the pitch as a place of relative safety. The witness advised that some years ago the IFA provided temporary seating to the front of the railway stand and to the front of the south stand at Windsor Park, and were permitted to use the pitch as a place of reasonable safety. This is not the case. The matter was addressed using terms and conditions contained in the General Safety Certificate for the venue as issued by Belfast City Council under the provisions of the Safety of Sports Grounds Northern Ireland Order 2006. The terms and conditions reflected the contents of the Red Guide, the document that was applicable at the time. The relevant part of the document is section 9.12 and states, in certain cases, forward evacuation onto the pitch or area of activity may form part of the emergency evacuation route, provided that it leads directly to an exit, which itself leads to a place of safety. A dedicated exit route from the pitch to a place of reasonable safety was provided. The STG did not have any involvement with the matter, as it was not part of the regional stadia programme. It preceded it. However, it can be seen that Belfast City Council acted in accordance with the contents of the Red Guide. The relevant piece of guidance for the proposed stadium at Casement Park is contained in section 10.9 in the Green Guide and states, for new construction, while in practice spectators may evacuate onto the pitch or area of activity in an emergency, this should not form part of the calculations for the emergency evacuation time for newly constructed grounds or sections of grounds. Witnesses have also stated that the STG had approved the design proposals for Casement Park and produced emails that they alleged supported this assertion. As stated above, there was ongoing work involving members of the STG, members of the design team and representatives of the GAA in spring and summer of 2013 regarding the exiting proposals. Following a number of meetings and telephone conversations, agreement was reached as to how the exiting could be achieved. The emails produced dated the 19th of June 2013 and 23rd of August 2013 were part of the correspondence relating to exiting and not emergency evacuation, and hopefully copies of those emails and emails around that time have been distributed amongst the members. They most certainly could not and should not be considered as a sign-off for the design proposals by the STG. It is worth noting that I and other members of the STG have attended a number of meetings with DCAL officials, and there have been documents exchanged. However, prior to the CAL investigation, never once did the department or any other party advise that they considered that the STG had signed off the design proposals. That is, until some weeks into this inquiry. We are concerned that such an interpretation was reached. Witnesses have advised the committee that there were ongoing discussions regarding the design proposals. The STG has not received any information, including drawings, since autumn 2013. A witness also advised the committee that agreement was reached on the design proposals at a meeting held on the 17th of June 2014. I will now ask my colleague Laura Strong to provide further information on this issue.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Strong. I've been employed as a technical officer in the Safety Compliance Unit for Sport Northern Ireland since November 2008. I have a BSc Honours in Environmental Health. I've obtained the NEBOSH Certificate in General Health and Safety and the NEBOSH National Diploma in Occupational Safety and Health. I'm a Chartered Environmental Health Practitioner, and I'm also a board member of the Chartered Institute for Environmental Health Regional Management Board for Northern Ireland. I am a member of the Safety Technical Groups for Casement Park, Windsor Park, which is now the National Football Stadium, and Ravenhill, now the Kingspan Stadium. On the 17th of June 2014, I attended a meeting of the Casement Park Steering Group with my colleague Paul Scott at the Wellington Park Hotel, Belfast. The steering group is chaired by the GAA and also includes representatives of DCAL. We had been invited to attend similar meetings where we would remain outside until we were invited in to discuss technical matters. The June meeting was also attended by the design and build team. At the outset of this meeting, we were asked by the design and build team what figure we would be using for the emergency evacuation time for Casement Park. When we advised that the 8-minute evacuation time to a place of safety or relative safety would be used in line with the contents of the Red Guide and of the Green Guide, we were subjected to a barrage of abuse. The design and build team went on to say that they had worked on the construction of 17 venues in Great Britain, with an emergency evacuation time of greater than 8 minutes. When asked if some of these venues could be identified, no examples were provided, but we were subjected to ridicule, abuse, felt patronised, and considered that efforts were being made to humiliate us. The meeting continued in an abusive manner, and there was most certainly, no agreement reached regarding the emergency evacuation arrangements. We contacted an inspector from the Sports Ground Safety Authority on the 17th upon leaving this meeting to inquire if there are any stadia in England and Wales that have an emergency evacuation time in excess of 8 minutes. We were advised that they were unaware of any venues with such arrangements, but they would make inquiries. Some weeks later, following an investigation, the Sports Ground Safety Authority contacted us to confirm that following extensive inquiries, all stadia in England and Wales that have been designated under the provisions of the Safety at Sports Grounds Act 1975 have an 8-minute emergency evacuation time. Following this meeting held on the 17th of June, 2 members of the GAA that had been in attendance apologised for the behaviour directed towards Paul and I. A further meeting was held involving members of the Design and Build team and members of the Safety Compliance Unit of Sport Northern Ireland on the 15th of October 2014, when we were advised that the emergency evacuation time for the proposed venue could be up to 29 minutes. However, it was proposed that this could be mitigated by the use of a pitch of a place of relative safety. This contravenes the contents of the Green Guide and Red Guide, as previously stated by my colleague. A phased evacuation was also suggested by the Design and Build team. Again, this is not in keeping with the contents of the Green Guide or the Red Guide, where spectators should be in a place of safety or relative safety within an 8-minute period. Again, there was absolutely no consensus at this meeting and most certainly no sign-off on the proposals for Casement Park. It should also be noted that both of these meetings occurred after emails earlier referred to, dated the 19th of June 2013 and the 23rd of August 2013, where witnesses claimed these emails represented sign-off by the STG. We asked the Design and Build team at the meeting if we could share these proposals with other members of the Safety Technical Group. However, we were told they had been instructed by DCAL that they were to meet with each organisation represented on the STG separately, and they were not to leave any documentation with us. This instruction was confirmed by a DCAL official, Kieran McGurk, on the 12th of November 2014. It is important that information is provided to the STG in accordance with the agreed process. I will now hand over to my colleague Jeremy Cowan of the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service.
Good morning, Chair, members. My name is Jeremy Cowan and I would like to introduce myself to you as a member of the STG for Casement Park. I have also been a member of the STGs for both Ravenhill, Kingspan and Windsor Park National Football Stadium. My job title is Assistant Emergency Planning Officer, a post I have held for 8 years. I have been employed by the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service since 1998 and have graduated through the ranks to my current position, having started as operational ambulance person. My role involves various aspects of emergency planning, which includes entertainment events and events held at sports grounds. My presentation today will consider some of the aspects that have relevance to the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service, namely medical provisions, exiting, emergency evacuation, human factors, and issues when responding to an emergency at the proposed new Casement Park. Medical provisions. In terms of medical provisions on site, we're satisfied that the proposals contain a suitable first aid facility for spectators and staff, including players. The Northern Ireland Ambulance Service has in the past been consulted by the safety manager at Casement Park, and there is nothing to suggest that this will not be the case in the new Casement Park. Exiting capacity. My colleague on the STG, Paul Scott, has previously informed the committee that, after consideration, the STG was content with the exiting arrangements for normal circumstances were adequate. With permission, I don't intend to go over this again, but simply to confirm that the emails that Paul has referred to earlier are a true reflection of the views of the STG. In other words, we were satisfied that the exiting arrangements would be achievable under normal circumstances. Emergency evacuation. However, there are issues remaining in terms of the emergency evacuation of the proposed new stadium. I can confirm that as part of the STG, concern remains regarding the emergency evacuation arrangements for the stadium, as has been described to the committee earlier. We in the STG cannot see how emergency evacuation could be achieved in safety and in compliance with the recognised guidance, namely the Green Guide. We have been asking for information regarding the emergency evacuation arrangements since spring 2013, but we have yet to receive any proposals for our consideration. In contrast to evidence provided to the committee in recent weeks, it is important to understand that the responsibility for writing the emergency evacuation plan for the stadium rests with the ground operator and not with the emergency services. Whilst the emergency services will certainly take care of people once they have reached a place of safety, the responsibility to physically get them there rests with the ground operator. I would refer members to section 10.11 of the Green Guide, which states, quote, management should prepare contingency plans. These plans should provide for the evacuation of all people in the event of emergency from all areas of the ground to a place of safety. Clearly, it is best practice that the ground operator's plans dovetail with those of the emergency services, and the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service and our partner emergency service responders remain open to assist in order to ensure the transition is smooth. But this is only possible where there are suitable emergency evacuation arrangements. Furthermore, the Green Guide, section 3.17, refers to external influences upon the stadium contingency arrangements. It states, I quote, contingency plans should lay down a structured and graduated response with clear guidelines on the measures to be adopted in particular circumstances, bearing in mind both internal and external factors specific to individual sports grounds. Human factors. Conversations have taken place about various individuals and their involvement in the respective projects. But I want to take a few moments here to consider the most important people in this story, certainly for myself and the other members of the STG, and that is the spectators themselves. Paul has described in detail the main issue in terms of emergency evacuation is crushing, so again, Commissioner, I don't intend to duplicate that part of the presentation. But what I do want to do is to explain to the committee exactly what injuries due to crushing mean. I won't go into any graphic detail, other than suffice it to say that when I was an operational paramedic, I attended emergency 999 calls where there were some that were due to crush injuries having been sustained. Whilst I won't go into any gratuitous detail, it is important the committee do understand that the consequences of the injury can be devastating to the individual and to their families. Lifelong and devastating. Issues when responding to the proposed stadium. Given the unique nature of the stadium, both in its design and the absence of outer circulation zones, plus the fact that it is serviced by only one arterial road, means that responding emergency services will potentially have difficulty in accessing the general area, let alone trying to access the stadium itself. This is before any further additional complications arise, such as issues on the Andersonstown Road, which will inevitably impact further both upon the emergency evacuation and our response to it. Again, attention is drawn to section 3.17 of the Green Guide, which I highlighted committee earlier, namely, contingency plans should lay down a structured and graduated response with clear guidelines on the measures to be adopted in particular circumstances, bearing in mind both internal and external factors specific to individual sports grounds. I will now hand over to my fellow member of the STG, Chief Inspector Anthony McNally from the Police Service of Northern Ireland.
Thank you, Jeremy. Chairperson, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to attend today and provide evidence in relation to your ongoing inquiry. My name is Anthony McNally and I'm the local policing Chief Inspector with geographical responsibility for the West Belfast area. I've been carrying out this role since February 2014. As Casement Park is situated within my geographical area of responsibility, I have overseen the PSNI involvement in the Safety Technical Group since taking up my post, and indeed attended the most recent meeting in November 2014. In terms of my attendance here today, there are three key points which I would wish to make. Firstly, the PSNI position on the redevelopment of Casement Park. The PSNI remain fully supportive of the redevelopment of Casement Park, and like all members of the STG, wish to see a stadium built that will bring trade and employment to the local area, one that provides an excellent spectating arena for the GAA matches, but of course does so in a safe environment for those attending. Secondly, PSNI input into the Safety Technical Group. The PSNI remains supportive of the use of the Safety Technical Group as a mechanism by which to support the casement redevelopment. The main benefit of the Safety Technical Group is the collective expertise the group brings together, and we remain of the view that working in partnership is the best means by which the PSNI can support and play a part in future discussions surrounding the proposed stadium. Thirdly, PSNI concerns. The PSNI went on record in October 2013 outlining the concerns we had regarding the redevelopment, but most notably the emergency evacuation arrangements. These concerns came from our involvement in the STG, from which Paul Scott has outlined the group's view that based on the stadium's plans presented to the group to date, given the planned capacity of 38,000 and positioning of the exits as is, namely with 72% exiting directly onto the Andersonstown Road, we cannot see how all persons within the stadium could reach a place of safety or reasonable safety within the 8-minute time frame if the Andersonstown Road exits were unavailable for any reason. It is accepted the likelihood of a full closure of the Andersonstown Road is low, but it is not unforeseeable. As my colleagues have previously alluded to, this is therefore why the PSNI have asked for, both through the Safety Technical Group but also during separate conversations with the GAA, for information surrounding the emergency evacuation arrangements for the stadium in order to seek to find a resolution. Again, as previously stated by my STG colleagues, it is the responsibility of the ground operator, as per the Green Guide, to produce an emergency evacuation plan for the stadium, and not the role of the emergency services to do so. In closing, and to reiterate my opening remarks, the PSNI remain committed to working with all interested parties moving forward, and in particular with regarding to resolving the emergency evacuation arrangements. I will now return you to my colleague, Mr. Paul Scott, for closing remarks.
As previously stated, the STG support the development of the stadium at Casement Park. However, it is important that it is a safe stadium. The STG look forward to viewing any proposals forwarded to them regarding emergency exiting or emergency evacuation arrangements, and will provide comment to DCAL accordingly. It is, as stated earlier, we are advised there are proposals that have been drafted and that these should be forwarded. I should also note that I met with Kieran McGurk on Saturday at the Tall Ships Festival. He referred me to the last part of his presentation to the CAL Committee on the 2nd of July. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to read it in any detail. I advised that I had not access to the presentation at that time. However, he advised that prior to leaving DCAL some months ago, funding had been made available to the department to purchase properties and land in the immediate area of Casement Park, and this may assist with the proposals regarding the emergency evacuation of the venue. As I say, we look forward to proposals being provided by the venue operators and will reference them against recognised guidance and provide comment to DCAL accordingly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you indeed for your presentations this morning, which were very thorough and informative. There is a number of questions because there's information there which contradicts things that we were told by some other witnesses. I have a number of people's names down here. If anyone hasn't put their name down yet, please let me know. First name is William Humphrey.
Thanks, Chairman. Good morning, and thank you very much for your attendance today. Thank you very much for bringing some certainty and facts to a situation and not interpretation, as we've had for some weeks around these issues. I also want to thank the STG for providing documentation, because you have provided documentation while other witnesses have not been so forthcoming in doing so. Can I start by asking Mr. Scott, I propose that you be brought today because whenever this document which you submitted, the text message, I think that is, could you just give us some background around that, please?
Yes, Carl Southern had worked with me at Sport NI before taking up a position with Decal as the architect to the stadium projects. We had been sort of reasonably friendly. However, from probably the spring of 2013, whenever we had been seeking information regarding the proposals for Casement Park and some assertions that were being made by Decal, by himself, some of the meetings would be robust, and there certainly were differences of opinion, both in terms of the technical requirements, but also in terms of the provision of information. Whenever Carl resigned to take up a position in England, he had a little gathering and he phoned me up and said, look, we know things have been difficult, but would I go? And indeed, I went along for half an hour, and when he was leaving, he called me over and apologised. He said, look, I'm so sorry for everything which has happened, but Decal, there were certain requirements Decal had placed on him. He indicated his concerns with regard to the Casement project, and he later confirmed that to me in a text. I had been asked by Mr. Hall, the clerk, to submit any documentation not contained in the bundle. And indeed, I sent a package, but when I reread the bundle, that text was not in it, and it was referred to in my presentation, and I thus sent it.
Could I just say there, I should have said at the start that get everyone in, we're talking about 12 minutes or thereabouts per person. We've dealt with the issue of the text message. If we move on.
Yeah. Could I ask then, if I've only got 12 minutes, people be as brief as possible in their answers, because I've got a number of it. Mr. Scott, it has been claimed that you agreed to a 40,000 Cedar Stadium, and that you've been inconsistent in your position.
That is not the case. In the bundle, and as I discussed at my last appearance here, I was brought in to meetings of the outline business case preparation back in 2009. And I advised that yes, the site was big enough for a 40,000 stadium, but there would be problems with exiting and emergency evacuation. I had also advised at the time that there was the likelihood that many properties in the area would have to be demolished to facilitate particularly the emergency evacuation. And I joked, well, it wasn't a joke, but I made people aware there were problems at Anfield whenever, and it's a famous case where they wanted to extend the stand and there was a terrace of houses, but two elderly ladies would not move despite how much money they were offered, and the project was held up for a considerable length of time to enable that process to be outworked. And as I have said, one of the consultants involving in the drafting of the case can clearly remember and is willing to provide documentation to say, in pages 50 and 51 of the outline business case, there is reference to my comments. They were not as how I would have liked them to have been written. They were a little bit clumsy, perhaps, but they gave the tenor that it had been discussed and it had been raised.
Given, as your colleagues have said, 72% of the exiting and egress is on the Andersonstown Road, does the math stack up in terms of emergency exiting for 40,000 Cedar Stadium?
No, and indeed that comes, even the design team, they have said that if there's a problem on the Andersonstown Road, and this comes from Charles Cook of Populous, who is a colleague of Mike Trice, who was here some weeks ago, stated that if there's a problem in the Andersonstown Road that results in the Andersonstown Road being unavailable, the capacity for the stadium would be 13,776. The design and build team have said in their discussions with us Again, if there's a problem on the Andersonstown Road, the evacuation time will be 29 minutes,
Okay.
well over the 8-minute.
There have been assertions from the GA that they feel they have been treated differently to the Irish Football Association and Ulster Rugby. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely not. With all of the other venues, we could always see how this could be achieved. Now, at Windsor Park, stroke the National Football Stadium, we did in fact raise concerns and advised that one exit, which was at that time, I believe, 3.6 metres wide, should be extended to 8.5 metres wide. That would be the exit leading from the stadium onto the Boucher Road. That, in fact, is now being, it will now be 14.5 metres wide.
Okay.
And so we could always see, if there was a problem at any part of the ground, how the others. They are, of course, smaller stadium with much smaller capacities, but we could see that, and they've been treated exactly the same.
Okay. Can I ask, in terms of your attendance, along with your colleagues Nick Harkness and Adele Cosgrove, when they get a residents' meeting,
Yeah.
there was exception taken to you attending that because of the pending JAR at that time. Do you think it was appropriate for you to go to that meeting?
Absolutely, and indeed it is part of the role of Sport NI. If we look at the explanatory memorandum to the legislation, or indeed the business case that set up the Safety Compliance Unit, we have got to provide advice to any stakeholder group. Now, we said at that meeting, it was talk of it being a secret meeting. It was not a secret meeting. It was held in a meeting room in Sport NI. No shutters were drawn. The room was booked. It was clear to see who would be attending. And we did not discuss particular stadia. The people wanted to discuss the content of the red guide and green guide. And we went through. We purposely said we are not discussing any stadium. Although, if you get the minutes, you will see there was a very brief strain into the Emirates Stadium, which was stopped very quickly.
Okay.
But no stadium in Northern Ireland was discussed.
Mr. Cowan, can I ask you, in terms of the emergency exiting plan, this committee has been told that it is the responsibility of the Blue Light Brigade, and I listened to your evidence and to Mr. McNally's reference. Could you confirm to this committee, and I know you have already done so, it is not your responsibility, the police service, fire or ambulance, but it is in fact the ground operator's responsibility?
I'm happy to confirm that. As I said, we will certainly take care of any spectator, any official, any player, anybody in and around the stadium once they're in that place of safety. But as I say, the responsibility to get keep spectators close to the ground.
Can I ask the Safety Technical Group, and whoever is most appropriate to answer it, did the Safety Technical Group ever come under pressure from an organisation or individual to have the emergency exiting report changed?
We were advised, twice, yeah, that people that the design team, stroke the GAA, ECAL had access to high-ranking police officers, and that they could they would be able to get the police report changed.
And who advised you of that?
Yeah. Ryan Feeney advised us, and also Carl Southern, and it was saying, well, look, if we get the police to change their views, then you guys are going to be, the other emergency services will follow suit. You guys are going to be left on your own, and you will look very foolish.
Okay, Laura, can I ask you then?
Sorry, can I add to that, please, though, if I may, Chair? I was involved in conversations from last summer through to now with the GAA, where they did come in to speak to senior police in relation to casement, and I can certainly say that there was never, through any of those conversations, any effort to put pressure on the police to change the report. There was meetings to clarify the purpose or the understanding of the police role, but there was certainly no pressure for the police to change the report.
Laura, can I ask you then, in terms of the meeting you talked and you made reference to at the Wellington Park on the 17th of June 2014, you said you and Mr. Scott suffered a barrage of abuse, I think is the quote. Can you expand on that?
Okay, most certainly. We'd attended this meeting as we'd attended other meetings in the past of the steering group, and they had often been quite robust conversations. We were obviously had a difference of opinion on various things, but this meeting took on a whole other context that the others hadn't been. Paul and I work in health and safety. We're used to getting a bit of abuse. Health and safety people aren't very popular we're aware of that, and we can cope with that. And we're used to be able to argue our point and to justify our reasoning. On this occasion, I felt that we were being made to feel belittled, and that, you know, you don't have a clue about this. This is how they do it in England. The design and build team have come over from England to speak at this meeting, to ask us questions about emergency evacuation and other areas around the safety at the ground and the views that we had. And I certainly in my career had not experienced a meeting like that before in the past. I've been in some difficult meetings in the past, and I honestly felt that this was over and above anything that we should have had to deal with in our role. It was really to try and ridicule us. People were openly laughing at us, and it was not professional in my opinion at all. I left feeling quite shaken, in all honesty, and Paul and I were both quite taken aback by the stance that had been taken. But we left immediately. Whenever we left, we immediately contacted inspectors in the SGSA, the Sports Ground Safety Authority, to say, look, please just give us some advice here. They're referring to these other grounds, you know, could you give us advice? Because we were made to feel so patronised and belittled, and that we'd made mistakes and people laughing at us. You do begin to think, oh my goodness, if we completely missed the point here. We knew that we hadn't, but you come away and you reassess the situation, you re-look at things. We did that. We spoke to other experts within the field, and we're happy that we've made the right decision.
And finally, time allow, yeah. Can I ask, Paul, you made reference at the end of your presentation about a conversation you had, Paul Ships, I think on Saturday, with Mr McGurk, about the purchase of properties and land in the immediate area of Casement Park.
He made reference to money being put in place, Ruth.
Okay.
I haven't had the opportunity to read his testimony.
Can I ask, did you ever attend a meeting with Populace or the GAA at which the purchase stroke demolition of houses and gardens was discussed?
There was a meeting on April 2014 with Populace by conference call, and representatives of a representative of the GAA was present when we were showing drawings. There were also meetings with Carl Southern and Kieran McGurk earlier in the year, and they had
Earlier in 2014?
Earlier in 2014,
okay.
Whenever the purchase of properties were discussed, it was accepted that, well, sorry, it wasn't accepted, but it was, they were looking at the purchase of properties to improve the emergency exit.
Were decal officials, or were we ever at meetings with decal officials, senior decal officials, or the minister where that issue was discussed?
Only decal officials.
Only decal officials?
Yes.
And who were they?
Kieran McGurk and Carl Southern. One of them was attended by myself, also by myself and by Nick Hartness. Another was attended by myself, Nick Hartness, and our Chief Executive.
Have I still more time?
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Right. Laura, can I ask you, there have been suggestions, Gordon and I has been in the public domain recently, there have been suggestions that it is very much a male-dominated organisation. In your experience, is that the case?
Sorry, that's Chair, through the Chair. We're talking about emergency exit, and that's nothing to do with the inquiry. I won't take exception to that.
I'm happy to talk to her privately about it, Chair. It's okay.
Okay.
In terms of going forward, Valerie Brown said that there was a problem with crowd modelling last week when she was here. Has that information been forthcoming yet?
No, we have had no information since the autumn of 2013. We, of course, would be very glad to assess that any proposals made against the recognised guidance. And as I said, we are supportive of a stadium at Casement Park. We want to see this happen. But we need the information. We cannot sign off on emergency evacuation without any information.
Thank you. Thanks, Chairman.
Before bringing the next person, just to ask either Laura or Paul, that meeting on the 17th of June 2014 at the Wellington Park Hotel, which had a different character from other meetings, were there additional people there that...
The design and build team from Buckingham's.
And who would have been there representing them? Or
Orlin McCloskey, there was at least one other gentleman, but we
We weren't introduced to people.
and do we know? I'm asking officials here. Will we receive minutes of the Casement Park Steering Group? Part of the
The first time I've ever heard of the Casement Steering Group.
right. Okay. We need.
We've requested minutes of those meetings on numerous occasions. In fact, I emailed Stephen Geekin of the GAA way back in October to say that we have not received any of those minutes and we're yet to be in possession of them.
There was also a very significant meeting on the October the 17th, maybe 2013, whenever one of McNally's colleagues attended, and Belfast City Council and ourselves. And again, we were promised minutes of the meeting, and the 16th of October. And indeed, we received an email to say that minutes would be forthcoming, but despite many phone calls, the department declined to provide minutes of the meeting. We have our own meeting notes, but we couldn't get anything from the department.
Something else.
Can we ask if
Was that group chaired by the GAA or by the department?
It was chaired by the GAA, we were told,
Right.
although in practice, Mr Southern from the department, he appeared to chair the meeting.
Okay.
We'll ask about minutes because it should be in whatever packs we receive.
Surely.
Next person is Rosalie McCorley.
For my good Carly, and thanks very much all of you for your presentations. The first one just want to ask is about yourself, Paul, at the OBC stage. What was the possibility of a major event requiring closure of the Andersonstown Road? Was that raised at the OBC stage?
No. Sorry, not to my recollection. I was brought into meetings, or some of the meetings, and parts of some of the meetings. What we were saying is that generally, because remember, at this point in time, there's no detailed design, but it could be seen that the proposed stadium would be in a very residential area with only one arterial road serving it. Thus, if there was a problem in that road, we had to get people out other ways. There were two relatively small exits, one 11 metres wide, one 10 metres wide, give or take, and that would only allow so many people out in a 8-minute period. So that is why I raised at that time the concerns with regarding exiting and emergency evacuation.
But the possibility of a major incident in the Andersonstown Road, that wasn't specifically mentioned that would require closure of the Andersonstown Road at the OBC stage.
Well, by implication it would, because we're saying if there's a problem at one end of the ground, where at that time it was very conceptual, but it could be seen that the majority of spectators under normal circumstances would have to go onto the Newton Arch Road. But so therefore, if
Andersonstown
sorry,
Road?
what did I say?
Newton Arch
Newton Arch Road. Oh dear, sorry.
would require some doing.
It would be that certainly would be some diversion.
But just you're saying it was conceptual.
Yeah.
The actual, the shape of things hasn't changed.
That's
so
right.
The Andersonstown Road's always been there.
That's
shape
right.
of the stadium, horseshoe, the residential area.
Well, it wasn't
That
a
didn't change.
horseshoe at that point. It was covered seating on all four sides.
But the residential area was there.
It was there, and
In
that's
2011.
That's
so
right, and that is in 29, and that is why we said we would need to look at increasing exiting to other parts of the proposed stadium.
Yeah, but this idea of if some major incident was to happen which would close the Andersonstown, that would mean that all the exiting
That
wasn't raised.
It was, because we were saying if the Andersonstown Road was unavailable, then we've got to get the people out some other way, and therefore that would involve either the Owen Vara side, the Moorland side, or somehow onto the rear, which also goes on to Owen Vara. So that is why we were saying this is likely to result in the demolition of several houses.
So that was at the OBC stage way back? That was included?
Well, in that we said exiting would have to be considered and emergency evacuation would have to be considered, because to get the exiting right, It involved quite a complex process, and I spent many meetings with Decal, with the design team and with the GAA as to how we could get the exiting to go okay. So we thought there was a good chance of the exiting being okay, but we just could not see how the emergency exiting, if there was an incident on the Andersonstown Road, if we didn't sort of say if it was a fire or what it would be, but we just knew if there was a problem here, how would we get the people out of the proposed stadium?
But you didn't, it wasn't raised as something which we need to stop here because we don't see that it's possible.
Well, you see, I was only in for part of the meetings. I gave my views and then I was excused. I didn't actually see the...
You didn't see the outline business case? No. You weren't part of that?
No, no. We have people who look at business cases at Sport NI. I'm on the technical side of things. I went and gave a technical view, and my view was the site is big enough, but can we get the people away either under normal circumstances or in the event of an incident to any of the exits, but particularly the Andersonstown Road because of the predominance of exiting to that part of the venue. Or proposed venue. Okay,
so then you actually didn't have any role in the sign-off of the OBC?
None.
You didn't?
None. So. I didn't see the OBC until a number of months ago, never.
Okay.
It was
the first you saw it a couple of months ago?
That's right. I had to go and get one of my colleagues who works in, what is that unit called? The unit which deals with business cases, and that is whenever I first saw it. And whenever I looked at the wording, it's a bit like Les Dawson. All the notes are there, not necessarily in the right order. It's not how I would have written it, but it does make reference to it. And indeed, I believe you've got it in the pack.
Okay, right, so let me just talk you through the bits, because the whole issue about houses being demolished and having to be bought to facilitate emergency exiting, and some of the residents were saying quite recently that they just became aware of this and were shocked to see that there was these plans to demolish their houses, and I can imagine that would be a shock. Somebody reading that. So you were aware at the time of the OBC that houses would have to be bought. That's what you said to us.
That's right. I believed that to be the case. Now, if someone can show me how they can emergency evacuate the 38,000 without that, we have been given sets of proposals, and no one on the safety technical group can see how this has been done. We have talked to other people and shown them conceptual drawings. We wouldn't, of course, show them the confidential drawings, but given them a schematic. And we have been saying to them, no one can show us. We asked, and that's why we've kept on asking, can we please show us how it's been done? Because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Now, the meetings then that were held in February, April time of 2014 with the department officials, they were more or less in acceptance. Houses would have to go. They asked us to keep that quiet until after the planning approval had been granted. There would also have been issues with keeping the roads free from traffic.
But that wasn't included in the OBC, so it wasn't included in the budget at the time.
I don't get involved in the economics of it.
So that was not. But did you tell Nick Harkness, who would have been at that time, that houses would have to be?
We've certainly. I can't recall if Nick was part of the process or not. It's 2009. But certainly, subsequently, and...
Okay, but it went for budget approval in March 2011, so would he have been there then?
Well, you see, I didn't join the process again until 2012, until sort of autumn 2012, whenever the initial drawings were being produced by Populous. And then whenever we advised, I can recall... I was given a set of drawings on a Friday and asked to comment on them by Monday. I came back on the Monday and spoke to Carl Southern. Look, I cannot see how this exiting stroke emergency evacuation works. He invited me to his office at Causeway Exchange. We went there where he did a conference call with Charles Cook of Populous. And Charles was, at that point, was advising, yes, we're going to use the cul-de-sac, I can't remember the name of it, but it is to the south-east corner of Casement, and they were also looking at other options to get people away from the stadium.
Okay, so also on the 30th of April statement, there was a reference to a table 4.3.4, and there were issues raised in that. That was at the time of the outline business case.
Yes.
And that was in terms of the difficulty with
that was reflective of what I had told the consultants.
Okay. And then you might have heard my advice, but he confirmed that the exits were increased by 50%, and that increased the circulation milling rate at the Andersonstown Road end of the stadium. So,
sorry, could you repeat that?
Mike Trice confirmed that exits were increased by 50%.
Yes, there was certainly an increase. If you recall from my presentation, we said to the GAA, look, we acknowledge that before larger games there will be a warm-up game or a minors game, and therefore we could allow for a relaxation, if you like, because we know that there'll be many people in before the 1 hour prior to the main game. So that enabled some exits to be taken away, and that allowed more exiting onto the Andersonstown Road, and that facilitates exiting. It facilitates exiting, but if there's a problem in the Andersonstown Road, we're still trying to get people potentially 38,000 through 2 exits, which, as Populace themselves say, Mike Trice's colleague, suitable for 13,776. I think that to be a little bit conservative, because I believe people in protected concourses going to those exits should also be included, and that might take us up to about 17,000, 18,000. But yeah.
So I suppose that there's a whole question about what would the probability be of an event where you would have no access to the Andersonstown Road.
Very low.
And how would you rate that? Because we were talking about 72% of the capacity audience not being able to exit from a loop, which they would be expected to.
It would be very low. But as I've described, there are other issues, and as Jeremy has described, there are other issues about getting the emergency services to the venue, etc. This venue is serviced by only one arterial road. I cannot think of any other venue serviced by one arterial road without the outer circulation zones, etc. Therefore, we must have a very robust exiting and emergency evacuation arrangement in place. What are the chances? They are very low.
It is foreseeable.
But very foreseeable.
It is foreseeable. It could happen.
How do you define foreseeable? What would that mean?
It would mean that.
What would be required for every Andersonstown Road exit to be unavailable?
A road traffic fatality in that Andersonstown Road area, a gas leak, a fire in one of the premises opposite, a device or suspected device, anything of that nature. It's a very low, but
I think that. Oh, sorry, no, if I just finish that, I'll move on to the next.
One more question,
Okay,
and I want to ask
right.
then Mr. McNally a question as well. But Mike Trice, and we've heard of his credentials, so he has done a lot of work, and he has got a long reputation on stadium building. So he said that the 8-minute requirement was to get to a place of relative safety, and his view is that getting from the seating area into a circulation area put people into a place of relative safety.
Provided.
And this would be in the context of this very low chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
But however foreseeable.
And basically, if you're in a place of relative safety, if you're on a concourse that doesn't narrow and is fire protected, and you can move at 82 persons per metre per minute, which approximates to about 4 persons in a square metre. Now, having measured out the concourses, you're talking really 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people. Now, those could be extended. Revised designs could extend that. And we would welcome the opportunity to see Mike Trice's proposals That's what we're here for. We certainly will look at that. We want this stadium to work.
Thank
And
you.
it might-
And just,
Sorry,
just please, I just need to follow this.
Well, there'll be an opportunity maybe at the end. We'll have to give everybody a fair
I'll
chance.
just-
Next question, Gordon Dunn.
Thanks, Chair. I'd first like to thank those that came before us today for the clear, precise evidence that you've given to us, and it's most welcome, and we appreciate. It's not easy coming here today to come before politicians and be grilled in a public forum, but we certainly appreciate your openness and willingness to do it. Well, I keep going on about the plans. You've probably noticed in the previous questioning sessions that we've had with various organisations, the plans that were submitted to the DOE Planning Service in June 2013, is that the date? I understand that's the date.
I understand that from Mr.
Yeah.
Mr. Malloy, I am told.
You were involved with the steering group. As chairman of the steering group, did you get an opportunity to review those plans and to comment in relation to
No, there was an email from
various safety concerns?
There was an email from Carl Southern saying that the plans. Well, first of all, there was a letter from the then Permanent Secretary, Rosalie Flanagan, that said that plans wouldn't go forward for approval unless there was STG sign-off, or would the contract move to design and build. There was then an email from Carl about the 19th, maybe about the 16th of June, which said, look, we really want to go forward for planning on the 19th of June, I believe. Can we have sign-off? And we said, we can't. At that point, we were just about coming to conclusion on the exiting. But I wrote back to him and telephoned him and said, look, we have had no information whatsoever on emergency evacuation. We cannot provide, sign-off unless we can actually see the proposals. As per my presentation, there are 4 elements: entrancing, viewing, exiting, and emergency evacuation. And the lower of those becomes the safe capacity. So we had 3. We've now got 3 out of 4. But it all falls down if we don't have 4 out of 4.
So you didn't sign off the plans?
No.
The STG did not sign off?
No, we have not signed off plans even as yet because we cannot get information on emergency evacuation.
So what assurance do you have that those drawings were compliant with the red and green guides?
Well, it depends what you mean. If those plans went through as per the last set of drawings, and there were capacities of up to, let's say, 16,000, 17,000, that they would be compliant for that size of an audience, but not for 38,000. And Belfast City Council, who ultimately will issue the safety certificate, following ECAL and Sport NI guidance, that is the sort of figure you would be looking at. Obviously, there would have to be more detailed calculations carried out, but that is what you're looking at. You're building a 38,000 seater stadium with a potential safe capacity of 18,000, somewhere of that order.
Okay. The drawings that were brought forward were done by the design team, which included Mr. Mike Trice.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And is he an expert in
Mike Trice has been
safety?
involved with the design of a lot of very good stadiums. Yes, and we would welcome the opportunity to look at his proposals. He certainly has a lot of experience.
You're satisfied that he would be competent in relation to?
Well, Mike Trice is the design architect for the GAA. The GAA is his client, and ECAL are his client. But Mike has designed a lot of good stadia, but we need to see his proposal. Now, he may pull a rabbit out of the hat and show us we've missed something, but until we can see the drawings, we have got to be, we cannot sign off.
Did you feel that the STG were fully recognised as part of the design team for this project, or were you brought in as and when required, I would put it?
Well, no, we met whenever. The process would have been the design team would have given the drawing proposals to DECAL. DECAL would have forwarded them to ourselves. We would have circulated the drawings to the other members and arranged a meeting. Then we would have given DECAL our comments. Those would have been gone back to DECAL, back to the design team, who would have made amendments, and it would have gone back and forth. So at that point, yes, we were. However, the fact that they went ahead on to planning and on to design and build, they just ignored us. Now,
They ignored you.
well, exactly, they've gone ahead and done that. Now, from the evidence, and I believe the people at DECAL, Rory Muskelly, Noel Malloy, Carl Southern, have all came and gave evidence that they know little or nothing about the guidance. The people who know about the guidance are Laura and myself and the other members of the STG. And so we were providing the technical input, yet they went ahead without, for planning and for design and build, without
Your input.
any sign-off from ourselves, particularly with regard to emergency evacuation.
Okay. A few other issues then, Chair. You talk about the emergency evacuation in relation to the capacity of 38,000.
Yeah.
The existing stadium, what's the maximum capacity that it could take?
Well, prior, whenever it was still in operation, it was just over 31,000. But that stadium was an existing stadium, and therefore the red guide was used, and the parts of the red guide relating to existing stadia. And I believe Valerie Brown last week, 2 weeks ago, gave a very thorough presentation as to how it was arrived. It used to be that a flow rate of 109 persons per metre per minute was acceptable. That has been reduced following observations and in keeping with British Standard 13,2000 to 82. So that's in excess of a 20% decrease right away. Secondly, the old stadium was open, largely open. There was a stand, a relatively small stand to one side, but there was a large circulation concourse where people could get, and thus that is how the stadium was arrived. Plus, in the good old days, you were allowed the pitch as a place of relative safety came more into play.
I was going to come to that.
That is not the case now. This is new build. Yeah. And we've been told to reference this against the red guide or the green guide, whichever has the higher standard, and as to future-proof the stadium.
So what's the issue then with the external circulation space with the new build?
Well, there isn't one.
Disappears.
Well, there wasn't one anyway. New stadiums. If you look at all the new stadia, St Mary's, Wembley, they all, the Etihad, they all have large circulation spaces outside, which means that you can have 360-degree exiting. I cannot think of a stadium constructed in recent years without a 360-degree exiting, which means if there's a problem at any part or any of the ground, people have other options.
But we're losing the circulation zones here.
No, we're not. No, they were never there.
But yeah, but under the new build, because you build out, you're building out really an existing site. So
it's the same footprint. It's the same.
You're losing the circulation zones. Isn't that right? External.
No, there was never external circulation zones to the old stadium, and that is why it is so important. Because we can't have external zones, that is why it is so important that we get the exiting and emergency exiting right.
Okay. But the footprint's
about the same.
Of the new build?
Of the new build is about the same as the old.
You're right, okay.
We are moving slightly back off the Andersonstown Road towards the M2, but substantively the same footprint.
M1.
You mentioned about the pitch, right? Some people are joking that the M1 maybe would be a circulation area. But you mentioned about the pitch, that can it be used, and this I think is very important, can it be used during evacuation, emergency evacuation of the stadium?
The new guidance, and indeed the red guide, is very, very clear on new build. Very clear. It's not interpretation or debate or a Dutch auction. It says, for new construction, while in practice spectators may evacuate onto the pitch or area of activity in an emergency, this should not form part of the calculation of the emergency evacuation time for newly constructed grounds or sections of grounds. So therefore, whenever you're doing your calculation as to the emergency exiting capacity, you have to ignore everyone who is on the pitch after an 8-minute period. And that is because that is when people start to panic, etc. They will then try to go out through exits which are already at or above capacity, and that's where our problems start. Now, there has been talk about a GA pitch is twice the size of a soccer pitch, and that is correct. But that is not the key issue. The key issue is the key dimension is the exit dimension, not the area of play.
So it's not to be used?
No.
Not to be used. You're clear on that?
Absolutely clear on that.
Finally, Chair, just...
Sorry, we can provide you with the...
Yeah, the reference.
You have 1 minute.
We got that, Mike.
Gordon.
Right, Chair, yeah. So we have had loads of evidence from those involved in the sponsor board right through who report to the Minister.
Sure.
And we have struggled to get evidence from anyone there that these issues that you're raising were reported up.
Sure.
Reported up. Is that a real risk?
Well, I was given my contact. I feel like are on the technical side.
Why was it not? Why was this information not being paid up?
Well, first of all, I was to go into the technical side. So my identified point of contact was Carl Southern, later Kieran McGurk, and later Rory Muskelly. So they got any information that we had. They got our views.
Yeah.
But you're quite right. There was also the sponsor board. Now, prior to the first sponsor board meeting of our chief executive, which was in December, so at least the first she attended was December 2013, we gave her advice. She spoke to Noel Malloy outside of the meeting. Never once again was I asked for a report or an update, other than whenever she was on leave and other directors were going. But my understanding was the directors were told they were there to listen and to listen only.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
you. Councillor
Thanks very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Sir, Scott, the last time you were here, you were uncertain about your position in terms of SDG.
Yes, that seems to have been clarified in that the new Permanent Secretary has advised me that the STG will function as was. We've had, and indeed he came to meet the STG, would it have been 2 weeks ago perhaps? We convened a special meeting for him to come to listen to us, to hear our views. There's a few inquiries going on. One of them was conducted by the Cabinet Office, and I would believe that the result into the technical matters, and I would believe that the results of that will be available in the next couple of weeks. There's an ongoing one into bullying and harassment, but in the interim, the Safety Technical Group functions as was prior to the intervention by DCAL on the 29th of April.
And you are the chair?
I'm the chair.
You're the acting secretary, in that you just were taking notes?
Well, we now have a member of the administrative support who takes notes, yes.
And you were the technical advisor?
Well, we all are.
We all bring technical expertise.
And there's no terms of reference, and there's no agreed minutes. Is that good governance? I'm just
well, first of all, let's go back to the terms of reference. I was asked by Noel Malloy what my views, how I would go about setting up a safety technical group. I said I'd go away and think about it, and I came back the next day and said to him, these are the membership, and this is how I believe it should function. He said, yes, we agree with all that, except I would like an observer from DCAL. I advised that would not be a problem. And he said he would get terms of reference to us because we were acting for DCAL. Now, we phoned a couple of times to see where they were, but in the interim period, drawings were coming into us and the design team was wanting answers. So we had to carry on. And whereas it would be better if there had been terms of reference, we continued as had been agreed orally with Mr Malloy. After a period, DCAL decided they didn't want to go. They said they were too busy. They didn't attend, and they said they would only want reports, which we did. Of late, Decal have now said they will attend again, and indeed the last meeting, Andrew Daddle did attend, and very welcome they are to attend.
Okay. You also said on the 30th of April meeting, and it was picked up on very much by the media, that the potential for a Hillsborough type scenario would exist within any.
I saw bits and pieces in the media.
Well, you were quite clear about here, and it's been picked up by a
Could
number.
you read the piece out to me, because I struggled to
I
find.
don't actually have it here, but there is a reference to Hillsborough. That situation has been contested by.
Sorry, could I just suggest there, if you want to take some time after you've asked your questions to look up the references. So
We're all being limited here today, I hope, to the
minutes
same
there,
time, so I want to make more suggestions.
Oh yes, but if you were asking a question about what he said, it's important he knows what he's supposed to have
Well,
said.
I'm just saying that Andrew Sloan from Sport NI, Valerie Brown from Belfast City Council, GA delegation, Mike Trice, Owen McCluskey from HBJV, Kieran McGurr from Decal, they've all contested that, and that actually could not have happened in any circumstances. And also that there was a traffic light procedure in order to go through the various stages in terms of approval, and that we had got at one point to boundary stage 4, and then because of the judicial review, we are probably back at boundary stage 2. So all those had to be signed off on before we would have got to any situation, and that simply could not have happened.
Well, it won't happen if during the certification procedures, if guidance is followed. That would mean then you would have a stadium with a capacity of about 38,000 and a safe capacity of, let's say, 16 to 18,000. So it can't happen in that case. But in that case, there we have a 38,000 stadium less than half occupied. If, however, that stadium were to be occupied, then there would be difficulties. Now, the first time I mentioned Hillsborough, which will be in my pack, I advise the members of the Safety Technical Group, and this is at a time when we cannot get information from Decal with regard to emergency evacuation. And there I say we need to be mindful of the situation surrounding the Hillsborough inquiry, whereby if the verdicts are overturned and we now get unlawful killing, that will have severe implications for Sheffield City Council officers and members present and retired, police officers present and retired, and other officials present.
Maybe. I just think it was an unfortunate reference in this circumstance, and that's I have thought that.
Certainly, if there's a line you feel is overstated, please tell me.
Back onto the planning issues there. The design and build team said they had worked on 17 venues. They listed those venues, all of which were major venues right across Britain and Ireland.
That's
and
right.
They also listed one which you seem to have difficulty finding a similar example to Casement. But surely the Aviva Stadium in Dublin can evacuate some 27,000 people onto the one singular route, and that was one of the stadia that the design and build team has said they'd worked on. 27,000 people can evacuate onto Marion Road at the one time. Surely you would have looked at that.
We haven't actually, because we've been involved with the Safe Sports Grounds Authority.
Yeah.
I will for the next meeting look at the Aviva arrangements.
Could you just ask, is there a different guide or something?
There is the Blue Guide in,
they have a Blue Guide,
in Dublin, but it's largely based on the 4th edition.
But I would have thought, Mr. Scott, in fairness, and I know that Kingspan went to a number of stadia right across the board, I think even across Europe, to look at best practice.
Yeah, I took the GAA to look at several stadia, and the Aviva it can evacuate on one side and one end and part of another side from memory. Now, I would need to refresh myself, but it's certainly more than one.
Well, as far as I know, it can evacuate 27,000 people onto the one arterial route.
I would imagine it could, but it's the other thing is it doesn't sit tight up to houses.
Okay. Just in terms of the houses, and you said a reference there, and who actually said this, that the potential purchase of houses was to keep that quiet till after the planning. Who said that?
Kieran McGurk and Carl Southern.
Kieran McGurk and Carl Southern.
That's right. At a meeting attended by Nick Harkness and myself.
Ryan Finney and Carl Southern.
No, Ryan
Kieran
Finney
McGurk.
was not at that meeting.
Okay, and the bit that you have at all ships here at the end there, we only have your word for that. is it?
Exactly, yes. I would need to look at the, as I said at the outset, we've had very limited time, and these minutes only appeared on the web yesterday, was it?
Yeah. How did things change then from 2009 when it was possible to get 32,000 people out to now?
Because there's different guidance. The flow rate of 109, which was thought to be achievable for large stadium, time has shown that it isn't achievable, and the British standards and the European standards changed, and so we are now in line with BS and EN 13200 at 92.
Yeah, and you talked about radial gangways.
Yeah.
Mike Trice talked about concourses, and it was his contention, and I know you haven't shot this down just yet.
No, we haven't.
But it is his contention that the zones 1, 2 and 3, and I think it was zone 3 that he referred to, could adequately accommodate 38,000 people.
Well, zone 1 is the pitch.
Yes.
Which cannot be used, as we've heard. Zone 2 is the viewing decks, and we've got to get off the viewing decks within 8 minutes. So therefore we're left with zone 3.
Yeah.
Mike Trice has designed many fine stadium, and I am more than happy to look at these proposals. We've been asking for this for 2 years.
I take that on board, but Zone 1 may not be able to use in an exit-in plan, but it can be used as a place of reasonable safety.
But cannot be involved in the calculations of the capacity.
I take that on board. Mr McNally, is there consensus among your people in terms of responsibilities and planning and whatever? I know that you have not covered the entire historical period of this. It was yourself and Steve McQueen, is that right?
That's correct.
So have you agreed in terms of that, as regard your approach to the STG and to emergency exiting? And
Have we agreed?
Have you agreed in terms of how your approach would be to a circumstance on the Andersonstown Road, actually?
Yeah, I mean, our concerns have been put forward from the initial period of time, albeit we've had some conversation in terms of whether the one or all of those exits were available or not available. But ultimately, it comes down, and the point that we have repeatedly made is that what we would like to see is that the plans are put forward to the SDG as a collective, as opposed to individual police officers being asked their views.
And did Assistant Chief Constable Harris have an input in this?
No, Assistant Chief Constable Kerr had a meeting with the GAA last June, I believe it to be, but that was not specifically around emergency evacuation. That was around PSNI's position at that point in time in relation to where we were in terms of our input into the STG. Emergency evacuation was covered. It was clear at that stage, and it has been the case that we've always said that we believe the strength to be in the collective, and that any future plans should be put to the STG as opposed to individual conversations with any one organisation.
Chair, just finally, maybe the crowd modelling issue that the design team and GA came forward with is not the one that I think you referred to, Mr. Scott, as the one that required purchase of additional properties.
It was for exiting, not for emergency evacuation.
Yeah, but it was also dated. There was 4 revisions to that.
There were several revisions, because initially it was showing when people exited under normal circumstances, they would 50% would go towards the city, 50% would go towards the country. Whenever we were shown the transport strategy, was showing that the vast majority of people would be going towards the city, and so it was redone for, I think it was 75, 25, 90, 10, and even at 100% or 100% going the other way. But again, that referred to exiting, and the all of the exits being available and that the road being absolutely sterile, no traffic movements, no cars parked on the road, etc.
Thank you. That's Mr. Hutchings' time. Oliver McMullen.
Yes, thank you. You continuously refer to the emergency plan.
Emergency evacuation arrangements.
Yeah. Who in the Red Guide has the responsibility for the emergency plan?
For the emergency evacuation arrangements,
Yeah.
it is the people, the venue operators and their agents.
Could you name? Give me an example.
Well, for Windsor Park or the National Football Stadium, it'll be the Irish Football Association and their team. For Ravenhill, it will be the Ulster branch of the Irish Rugby Football Union and their team.
And it wouldn't be anything to do with the multi-agency team?
There will be an emergency plan for the area, for the West Belfast area, indeed the Belfast area. But that is to do whether there's a problem at the docks with a gas tanker, whether it's an aircraft crashing at the city airport. But whenever you
That
come...
wouldn't have anything to do with the Andersonstown Road. An emergency plan drawn up and headed by council.
There will be arrangements, but the arrangements for getting people out of the stadium will be the stadium
Well,
operators.
the emergency agency team, multi-agency team, would have been headed up by council, the PSNI, and the blue light.
There will be an emergency, but we're talking about the emergency evacuation arrangements for the stadium. We have got to get people out of the stadium within an 8-minute, or at least to a place of relative safety.
Right. So that would come into the multi-agency.
Well, that should dovetail, once the venue operators have done this, that will dovetail into fire, police and ambulance.
Yeah, so we need to
arrangements.
separate that out, because we can't be staying in the docks all the time.
No.
With aeroplanes crashing and whatnot. We're talking here
They're
about
two
this road.
separate issues. Emergency
Yes.
evacuation
That's
from
not-
a
that
blind
hasn't been
is
made very
completely
clear
different
today.
to an emergency plan. Two different...
That needs to be made very clear
documents.
today, that
We've
there
made
is
that clear.
two separate, and I don't think that's been made clear.
Well, let's make it clear now. We need an emergency evacuation arrangements. There will be an emergency plan for the various parts of Belfast, no matter what that misfortune might be, and the two should dovetail into each other.
And did you request that off the PSNI or?
No, we can't do. Haven't got to that stage because we need the emergency evacuation arrangements
Okay.
for Casement
We haven't
Park.
got to that stage.
Yep, that's right.
Populous, the architects,
Yeah,
and they're internationally known.
we are.
And Mike Trice, the architect. How do you rate Mike Trice?
Mike Trice has been involved in the design.
Now, how do you rate him as an architect with his background?
It's
Well, all
very
I-
difficult to ask somebody to
No, no,
speculate
no.
on somebody's professionalism.
All I can say is
But about
stadia that
carrying
have
on
been
with-
designed by Mike Trice are fine stadia, but if we look at the ones that he's mentioned, they all have 360-degree exiting, they all have outer zones, they all are served by more than one arterial road. Nobody has seen a stadium like this, and that is why it is so important to get the exiting and the emergency evacuation right, because this... and we fully accept, and we want to work with the design team, because, you know...
We can hold you not there, just...
Yeah.
But, it's stated in the record that the Casement Park project complies with both the red and the green guides.
For what capacity at this point?
For normal exit and for emergency exit.
38,000 or for
For
18,000?
a normal exit and emergency exit.
For
My question
what
would be,
capacity?
do you believe that's to be correct?
For an attendance of somewhere circa 16,000, 18,000, that would be possible. But whenever we go to 38, no. But until we see the emergency the evacuation proposals, and we're more than happy to come look at those, assess them, reference them, and as we've done with the other with entrancing capacity, etc., we will work with the design team. But we cannot see, and we need to see, the emergency evacuation proposals.
Then you wouldn't agree with Populous that it's possible to apply a phased evacuation of spectators based on a proportional evacuation?
Don't worry about me. The guidance does not. The guidance states very clearly everybody must be in a place of safety or relative safety within 8 minutes.
I'm asking you.
Well, That's what I'm saying. We follow the guidance.
We reference
again-
everything we do to the guidance. That's what our point of reference is.
And
And do you believe that all the stadiums were treated the same?
absolutely,
There
absolutely.
was never any variation at all?
Where we were asked for a variation, we referenced that because the guide does say, as I said at the outset of my presentation, you can deviate from the guide, provided you can demonstrate an equal or greater degree of safety.
Yeah.
So where there were, just as we said with Casement Park, we allowed the number of turnstiles to drop from circa 58 to circa 48 because the playing of the minor game would provide an equal or greater degree of safety.
Yes.
And that is the yardstick which we use, an equal or greater degree of safety.
Right. And I'm not sure quite clear in your role in the STG,
I'm the chair.
the chair and the secretary.
We have, well, I take notes.
You take a
as
few
does-
notes here and
as
there.
as does my colleague, but we have a member of our business support staff or administrative support who takes notes also.
And what would you be expected to know? Would you be expected to know everything that goes on from the OBC to planning?
Well, with the OBC, I gave evidence to the OBC, as I said earlier.
Yes.
Then I dropped out of the process altogether for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Then, once the drawings started to come through, I then came aboard and we convened the STGs. Whenever the drawings come to us, we assess them against the relevant documentation, advise decal, and it goes back and forth.
And it goes back into planning, goes to planning then?
No, whenever, if we look at Rosalie Flanagan, the then Permanent Secretary, she said that the projects would not go through to planning until there was sign-off from ourselves, and then we were later told, nor would the contractors be appointed, the design and build contractors be appointed until there was sign-off. With Casement Park, without there being sign-off, they went forward to both.
And was there any red flag issues raised? I'm using the term red flag issues, you know. Some say showstoppers, I call red flag.
There was, because we told the people who we were told to speak to in decal. Carl Southern was our designated point of contact. Everything went through him. Latterly, Kieran McGurk, and then Rory Muskelly. So that all goes through on the technical side.
And was there red flags issued then?
Like we said, in all of the documentation, we cannot sign this off until we see the emergency evacuation arrangements.
And it wasn't signed off?
No.
You didn't sign it off?
No, absolutely not.
And that was a red flag?
It should have been treated as a red flag.
No, I didn't ask you. It should have been. Was it raised as a red flag? Not should have been, was it?
It was, in that we sent communications to decal and told them.
What?
We told them we couldn't sign it off because we didn't have the emergency evacuation
That's in the
arrangement.
fact.
Sorry?
Yeah, I'll just say there, I think there are questions there that really need to be put to decal rather than to Paul
Oh,
Scott.
well, this is the chair of the STG. I'm
Yes.
just asking the gentleman because I'm not too sure that there's a role in the whole thing, you know. And you forgive me for, but that you say is reference to not signing off on it is in the pie.
That's right. Unless it said the plans or the drawings would not go forward to planning. That is what the Permanent Secretary told us. We didn't sign them off. Never did. We kept asking, please show us the emergency evacuation proposals. Hopefully, Mr. Trice has advised the committee that he has developed these. We're more than happy to look at them.
And would you agree that this is all part of the process? Like we're still in the planning process. Like we've a long way to go yet.
No. Plans were sought without our sign-off, and planning permission was given. Then it was retracted following the judicial review. Rory Muskelly then told this committee some months ago that that there would be no waste of public money because the drawings were going in as was. So we have not. Is this an ongoing process? The last drawings we have received as the Safety Technical Group was in autumn 2013. We have been asking for them since, and there's limited communication. There was the meetings we had, individual meetings with, just with Sport Northern Ireland and Buckingham's. But we were told we were not to share any information with the rest of the safety technical group. And as Anthony McNally has said, the strength is the group as a whole. So we all come, the fire, police and ambulance, Belfast City Council and ourselves can look at this and assess the plans collectively. Because some things which we may be comfortable with may present problems for Jeremy or for Chief Inspector McNally.
Right. Can I ask you just a couple of very quick ones now? You said that you had a meeting in the hotel in Belfast where it became very, what was your wording on it? Very...
Well, it was a barrage of abuse, I think is the word that I used.
You did say that you're pretty thick-skinned, you could take abuse. So what type of abuse was it when you came out shaking? You did say you were shaking when you came out.
I was very taken aback, to be honest. It's not the kind of treatment that you expect or behaviour that you expect within a professional meeting.
Who gave you the abuse?
These were, well, there was representatives there from DCAL, from the GA, from Buckingham.
Who gave the abuse? Was it a collective abuse or was it single abuse?
There was collectively. There was
so everybody was
many
attacking
different
you.
Individuals, and there was just Paul and I there to answer questions.
But they were all attacking you. Those three people were, the three groups were all attacking you.
Yeah, we felt so. Yeah, we felt that very, very much. I don't think we're overly sensitive, and that we, would take things, would be crying in a corner very regularly. I think we're quite capable of.
But one of the representatives from the GAA phoned me the next morning and said, "Paul, I am so sorry about what you had to put up with yesterday. It was just uncalled for." And another member of the GAA said similar things whenever I met him a few days later.
And what's the relevance of that report that Paige you sent in last week to the committee here on you and Mr.
I think we've already dealt with that issue.
No, I just wanted to
yeah,
get
but your time is
One
up.
of the documents that I referred to
What was the hot thing in it?
The committee agreed,
hot
sorry,
beer report.
just let me say, the committee agreed not to include it.
Oh, right, sorry, it's not included,
Right.
okay.
And your time is up, so the next person is Dominic Bradley.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon it is now, and thanks very much for your presentation. Mr. Scott, several of the witnesses here, Carl Sutherland, Noel Malloy and Kieran McCork, they all gave evidence here and they gave us to believe that there were no red flags raised regarding safety, I think, until the police raised the scenario of the Andersonstown Road being closed. Now, the stadium was in planning and work was going on over several years at that stage. So these people who are professionals, as you are telling us that you did not, and the STG did not raise any safety red flags until the police came up with a scenario of the possible closure of the Andersonstown Road.
That is not the case. If we look at the emails which went to Carl Southern, and at that time Noel Malloy was his boss, and Carl copied him into many of those emails. Kieran was possibly more on the business side of things and the money side of things. We have the emails. We can show you the emails, and I am amazed that they have came up with that scenario. Amazed. We had a very robust, not as robust as the meeting in the Wellington Park Hotel at Causeway Exchange on the 16th of October 2013. And it was made very, very clear, because DCAL were saying, you must sign this off, you've got to sign this off. And we were saying, we cannot sign this off. And then we're asked, well, could you not sign it off and we'll work this out later? And this has been one of the problems. Let's build the thing and then we'll worry about the exiting or emergency evacuation afterwards. Once it's built, you can't do that. And but we can produce, and we have produced, the evidence to show.
I'm just telling you that's what they told the committee. In fact, Mr. Sutherland said that he had a very good working relationship with you,
We have a robust-
not only within the formal work setting, but also outside it.
That's
and
right,
that
yeah.
you did other work outside of your,
That's right.
let's say, your official work, and he advised you on that and so on. And he said that he was quite taken aback when you appeared and expressed the views you did on the 30th of April.
30th of April. I don't see how he could. The emails were there. The emails.
In fact, he thought it was quite out of character, you know, given what the relationship he had with you up until then.
Well, I mean, I can't really comment on Mr. Southern's views. All I can say is, I mean, I've nothing against Carl Southern. We've had differences over the design of the stadium, although Carl has subsequently said to me that he didn't necessarily agree with the decal views. But all of the emails, etc., etc., are
what he
there.
told the committee.
Sorry?
That's not what he told the committee.
May not be, but there are the emails.
Yeah. Okay. If we go to your appearance on the 30th of April before the committee, you said that the stadium would only be safe for 18,000.
Somewhere in the order, and indeed,
people.
Populace have said that if the Andersonstown Road is closed, it is only safe for 13,776.
Well, you said on that day that the figure you mentioned was 18,000.
I think Populace were a
just
little conservative.
let me finish, please. And you said that that was due to the possibility of an incident on the Andersonstown Road, which would have caused the exit on that side of the ground to be closed. Would it be fair to say that those incidents that you highlighted, such as I think there was a bomb outside the ground, house fire, traffic collision, would they fall under the term contingency?
There would have to be a contingency plan, but in order for a contingency plan to work, you need suitable emergency exiting arrangements. Now, the contingency is how you manage that, but you can only manage that if you have suitable exits to get people to a place of safety or a place of relative
So
safety.
under the red and green guides, those incidents would come under contingency planning?
There's a bit of a duality. There is a requirement to provide a suitable number of exits at appropriate locations. And that's how you should design a stadium. If a stadium is designed in that manner and in accordance with the guidance, then if we do have a problem, the contingency planning will enable all of the people to move to a place of safety or a place of relative safety. Sadly, at least we cannot see how that's done. We're not saying it can't be done, and we certainly would look forward to receiving emergency.
But is there, according to the red and green guides, what is the evacuation time in the event of a contingency?
It is always 8 minutes to a place of safety or relative safety.
And is there any evacuation time?
That isn't the emergency evacuation time. You've got to get people to a place of safety or relative safety within an 8-minute period.
Okay. In the red guide, page 24, it is
Okay.
2.15, section 1. It states, and this is a quote, arrangements for partially and fully evacuating the ground and arrangements if there is a hazard outside the ground and people need to stay in. Under what circumstances would people need to stay in the ground?
People should always be able to evacuate because panic is the big thing. And after 8 minutes, no matter what...
You said, earlier you said evacuation meant to go to a place of relative safety.
Safety or relative safety. That could be inside or outside of the ground, but there are certain parameters for both. You can't be evacuating, for example, people out onto a busy road. That is not a place of safety. But working with the emergency services, that can be addressed. But they either need to be outside of the ground or inside the ground in a place of relative safety.
And the design for the ground that you had seen, were there places of relative safety within the ground?
There's places of relative safety, but they are for a limited capacity. We could only see approximately 3,000 to 4,000 people being accommodated in those places of relative safety. Now, if Mike Trice has got proposals, we will more than happy to look at them, more than happy to discuss it with him.
Okay. Pages 40 to 44 of your own bundle, you detail a meeting, you have notes on the STG meeting held on the 12th of April 2013, and page 41, paragraph 6, confirms that PSNI advised that there would be a possibility that the Andersonstown Road would be closed for exiting or emergency exiting. If the Andersonstown Road is closed, surely the threat of the incidents that you mentioned are removed, or at least
No, as I said
largely reduced.
No, as I said earlier, the big fear is panic and crushing. That is the big fear. So experience has been shown at many types of event, be it the Love Parade in Germany, be it the Great White in America, the problem is crushing. People after 8 minutes tend to worry and panic, and therefore, if they try to get, therefore there should be appropriate exits for them who leave the stadium to a place of safety or be in a place of relative safety, moving towards the place of safety.
So the last rounds that you saw of the New Casement Park in emergency evacuation mode, does it comply with the red and green gates?
No, not for, sorry, it will for an audience size of 16,000, 18,000, not for 38,000.
What are your reasons for saying that?
It goes on the rate of passage, which is 82 persons per metre per minute, based on the 8 minutes and the width of the exit gates. So that will get you the number of people who can leave the venue. Now, they still have to get away from the venue, and that's maybe another discussion. But there will also be a number of people in those protected routes able to move at 82 persons per metre per minute. And these routes were substantively 6 to 8 metres wide and probably about 80, 90 metres long. And they are fire protected, no difficulty with that. And at that point, they are not funneling or narrowing. So therefore, a number of people, in addition to the 14,000 who will get out, could also be considered to be in a place of relative safety, and that will take the capacity up to about 16,000, 18,000, depending on the finer detail.
And yet, we have this company, Populous, which has an international reputation
Absolutely.
for stadium design, putting it in writing that the stadium, as most recently designed, met the red and green guides.
And we will welcome the proposals so that we can verify that, and we'll discuss that with them. They say they have, more than happy to look at them. But also bear in mind, Populous, any of these stadia that they've developed in recent years have all been, there's always been outer circulation zones, there's been 360-degree exiting served by more than one arterial road. You know, this is a challenging site. It's not insurmountable, but it is going to be challenging.
Mr. O'Hoshin says that the Aviva Stadium in Dublin has a similar type
No,
of
the Aviva certainly has got one side and one end where there's exiting, and will get you out of the stadium to a place of safety. I would need to refresh my knowledge of it, but I did look at it in the. Went down and spoke to the people during the design stage. My recollection is that there's actually two sides and one end that are suitable. There's certainly one side and one end, and I think part of the second side.
Okay, thank you. That's 16 minutes, right? Karen McKevitt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks very much to everybody for coming this morning and or this afternoon as well, and for your further presentation, Paul.
Thank you.
Anthony, just for confirmation, that's the only question I probably have for yourself. I think you said that no one involved in this project applied any pressure and all meetings were held in order to try to get a solution. Could I just get confirmation that's what they did say?
In respect of meetings with the GAA, is that you're referring to?
Yeah,
there were a number of meetings held with the GAA that I was present at from my time involved in this, and certainly it was just in terms of identifying what the PSNI position on it was for purposes of clarity. There was no pressure applied, and during those meetings what I can say is the PSNI's view has always been that, as I've said on a number of occasions, the strength we feel is in the collective, and that we welcome the opportunity to work as part of the ST.
Thank you, thank you. Can I sort of suggest maybe, would it be fair of me to describe the STG group established as part of the previous Casement Park project as an advisory committee? I'm touching on that just because you were saying you were invited in and out of committee meetings.
There's two lots of committee. The STG was, we were convened, if you like, by Noel Malloy, who asked us to provide advice. And this was largely because ultimately the stadium will receive a safety certificate from Belfast City Council, and they will do that in accordance with the recognised guidance. So in order to ensure that there were no surprises at the end, that the stadium would receive a safety certificate with a capacity equating, give or take, to the design capacity.
Yeah, we talked about this in your previous address on the 30th of April. Could you remind me of your role with Belfast City Council,
with Belfast,
the remit and how it fits in with the statutory authority?
Right. Belfast City Council, under the provisions of the Safety of Sports Grounds Order, will issue a safety certificate on Casement Park, it being a designated stadium. So they will look at compliance with the Red Guide, both in terms of its layout and structure.
Is this your role, Paul? Yeah?
Oh no, this is Belfast.
No, but I want reference to your role.
Right.
We didn't mention it the last time.
Yes, I am the chair. Sorry, I am the head of the safety compliance unit at Sport Northern Ireland. We have three remits. The first is to oversee the certification processes across Northern Ireland by the various district councils at the 30 designated stadia, and to report twice per year to DCAL, and that is to the sports unit rather than the stadium unit. So we do that twice a year, and we will advise, are the council applying suitable terms and conditions to the stadia within their remit. Secondly, we are, if you like, supposed to be the font of knowledge. People, be they governing bodies, be they venue operators, the emergency services can come to us and we can provide advice to them. And we have done this to all of the governing bodies, and I have gone and spoken to the GAA on many an occasion and helped them with their safety management issues.
And that would coincide, I suppose, with the presentation that we got from the GAA, where it was described that you had a really good working relationship within that organisation.
Yes, I mean, I've gone to Croke Park and given presentations for them.
You were clearly regarded as an expert in these matters, and how you would rate the calibre. So I want to ask you, how would you rate the calibre of the GAA in terms of their track record for managing very large crowds, given that in Ulster and Ireland over 30,000 people regarded attend Ulster football finals, 80,000 in Croke Park, etc. for the All-Ireland finals. They must know what they're doing.
Generally,
because I've never heard of any disasters or near misses or anything like that. But
generally, they are very good. There have been one or two blips, but we have worked through them with the GAA.
Okay. This red and green guide, as a layperson, has me, honestly, I'm not even going to imagine. Is it correct for me to say that the red and green guide is used in the STG report for the evacuation of stadia when the emergency is within the stadium? Or what regulations are used when the emergency is outside the stadium? Is there a difference?
There is. Well, no. As Jeremy has said in his presentation, the factor can be internal or external.
And that's in the red and green guide?
It is,
yes. Could you guide me to that?
Can we just read out the last bit of Jeremy's presentation? Maybe, Jeremy, you can maybe repeat it.
Yes, ma'am. It was section 3.17 of the Green Guide. And it said contingency plans should lay down a structured and graduated response with clear guidelines on the measures to be adopted in particular circumstances. bearing in mind both internal and external factors specific to sports grounds.
Okay, thank you. We'll go back again. The red and green guide also gives specific safe passage flow rates within the stadium, and you've touched on them earlier.
Yes.
You confirmed to us where the red and green guide that recommends the use of these passage rates to the adjacent streets of any stadium development.
Say that again, sorry, I missed the last bit of it, sorry.
The red and green guide also gives very specific safe passage flow rates, which you have
Yes.
touched on earlier,
Yep.
within the stadium. Can you confirm to us where in the red and green guide it recommends the use of these passage rates to the adjacent streets of any stadium development?
It doesn't, and we have always taken that the conditions are the same, provided the street is reasonably level. And of course there can be issues if there's cars parked on the street or indeed traffic moving on the street. But we have used in our...
Doesn't is good enough, that's okay, it doesn't. There's just now, I know we're probably going to run out of time here, but there's a few more questions that I would like to ask. In the comprehensive bundle, and you've tapped it a couple of times, I'm sure, out today, of the evidence to the committee, why was 2 emails to the decal and emergency exiting and the sign-off on the project omitted from your bundle?
They were not. They were exiting. There was discussion and debate and calculation, and at that time we were working with the GAA, with the design team and with decal as to how we would secure the exiting element.
Which email are you talking about?
Sorry?
Which email are you answering?
Both
The 19th of June and the 23rd of August?
The 23rd of August, both of them.
23rd of August. And what do we say? And it says, appears to be consensus that the latest proposals address the exiting concerns.
That's very different to emergency exiting.
But it's on the subject that you've sent the email on is on Casement Park final stage technical report.
That originally came from Carl.
No, this is from you to Carl.
Where's this?
23rd of August.
I bet it's
Right, the email sent before has that heading. That's Carl's heading.
Why did you not include the emergency exit then in that?
We have been telling them repeatedly we need the emergency exiting.
Why is it not in that one then if it's
because
under the subject of the final stage technical report?
Because this was during a period whenever we were discussing exiting. And what we were saying is we have now reached consensus on the exiting. Both prior to that and subsequent to that, we have been stating we have big concerns with regard to emergency evacuation. And indeed, subsequent to these emails, for example, the meeting we had at Causeway Exchange, the department were very well aware we had problems. We could not sign off on emergency evacuation because no one would give us any information.
But this was a final stage technical report.
That's their heading, not ours.
That is their heading, not ours.
Because Carl sent that originally, that email, at 10 minutes
didn't include it.
Past 12.
It didn't include it, do you know?
Sorry, it's I was responding to an email of Carl that he entitled Final Stage Report, Technical Report, and I was advising him that the exiting was okay. Now, anyone with competence in stadium design would know that emergency evacuation and exiting were not one and the same. Indeed, the guides specifically state that. And thus there is the 4-stage process in arriving at your final capacity, and it needs all 4 of those. It's going to be the lowest of those 4, so 3 of them could be fantastic. If the 4th one isn't up to scratch, that is what we go with.
In the response to that, Carl said he was surprised your meeting again, given the layout hasn't changed substantively, and in light of your previous principal approval. Enlighten us on that.
I then say the exiting arrangements did change significantly in my email of response.
Is that in the pack, Paul?
It is indeed, yes, there we are. The exit did change significantly.
Okay.
It's the paper that was tabled today. It wasn't in that bundle. It was tabled today.
It wasn't in the bundle.
It wasn't in the bundle because it was in relation to exiting and not emergency evacuation.
But surely
That's
it's
what this is
together.
for.
Surely
Two
exiting.
separate
You know,
Sorry,
fully-
could also just, in fairness to everyone, at very short notice at the start, Mr. Scott came and he produced a bundle and he said that there were other things. So it's when we look at the length of time it's taken the department to get the papers together, it's understandable. But it has been tabled today. You do have it in front of you. If you want to refer to it, please do so.
We already have referred to.
We were told literally on Friday afternoon to get ourselves together for today.
So were we.
Okay.
Yeah.
Finished.
You'd rather not.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leslie Cree.
Thanks, Chair. And good afternoon, gentlemen, lady. Reference has been made to the Blue Light Brigade here. And certainly in evidence that we have taken, it's quite clear that a lot of people had the idea that this was going to be something sorted out by the Blue Light Brigade at the end of the day. Was that view ever expressed to you, and were you in a position to challenge it?
Never. That was the first we saw of that. If you look through all the minutes, that was never raised.
Okay. The design and build team itself, who actually chaired the meeting? Who was the leader?
The meeting should have been chaired by the GAA, although Mr. McCluskey appeared to take the lead.
And was that consistent then? So there was...
Previous meetings were largely, again, to be chaired by the GAA, but seemed to be chaired by Carl Southern. He seemed to take the lead on going through the various matters they wanted to discuss.
Right. And in the case of Populous then, have you any evidence, or can you remember them discussing emergency exiting with your people?
No, because we kept asking them for the emergency exiting strategy.
And what was the response to that?
We'll work it out, we'll get it back, because we would always be dealing with Decal, who in turn would pass that on to... our initial point of contact would have been Decal, would have been Carl Southern. And then Carl would have raised the issues with Populous. But there were times whenever we did speak directly to Populous. There were a couple of meetings but they were pretty conceptual. They weren't, this is what it is, here's our drawings. It's what do you think of this, what do you think of that, what would your thought process be?
Do you think there was any urgency in their part to actually have this matter resolved?
We still haven't got any drawings, some 2 and a bit years later.
Speaks for itself.
Yeah.
You did refer there earlier, Paul, to Carl Southern's views differing from those of Decal. Can you sort of flesh that out a bit? In what respect or what views?
Well, I think he was concerned that there was a stadium of this magnitude and with this amount of people in a residential area. But that's his view, or as conveyed to me.
But surely Decal would then be aware of the concerns, would they not? He's a member, he was the leader.
I don't know whether who he conveyed it to at Decal or what the discussions would have been.
Interesting. And finally, Chair, you notice that I'm very brief and succinct. For Anthony, in your report, you mentioned the concerns in October 2013, going on record, to use your expression, most notably with respect to the emergency evacuation arrangements. Who was that to? To whom were you talking there?
There was a report submitted at that time to the STG, but equally that was taken to the meeting referred to by my colleagues, the meeting they had with Decal in October, which Sergeant Steve McQueen attended, and he conveyed the views of that documentation at that time.
So at that meeting on the 13th of October?
I'm not sure of the exact 16th of October 2000.
16th of October
At
2015.
Causeway Exchange.
So again, it was clearly
Yes.
a red light issue.
Yes.
Some people like it, or a red flag issue.
It was certainly an issue.
So have you had any information recently to say, you know, this emergency evacuation arrangement will be with you? Ever?
No. If you like, Buckingham's did come to us and spoke to us about their ideas, but they involved using the pitch as a place of safety, which is clearly against the Green Guide, and also using a technique called phased evacuation, which is used in some smaller buildings or buildings which hold lesser numbers of people, but is certainly against the ethos of the recognised guidance for a stadium.
This certainly wasn't an issue for DCAL, by Elizabeth.
DCAL were aware of the meeting because whenever we asked, could we take these proposals to the other members of the STG, we were told no, that DCAL had advised them to speak to each of the constituent organisations separately, and that we were concerned about that, of course, but that was confirmed at a later meeting with the DCAL official who said yes, that was the case, that instruction had been given.
Who was that official?
Kieran McGurk.
Right.
Thanks, Chair.
Laura can give you the date of the meeting. It was
12th of November 2014.
Okay, thank you. Just before, thanks, before we go into Basil, just to pick up, the steering group, and it does get complex because there are so many steering groups and advisory groups and so on. It's the one there on the left, the GA steering group, which is part of the GA element, and then you have the IFA steering group and the rugby steering group. So that it's clear that that's the group that was meeting in the Wellington Park.
We are waiting on minutes.
We're waiting minutes for that. Okay, thank you. Basil?
Thank you, Chair. Could I start with Mr McNally? The PSNI went on the record saying that they had concerns about the Andersonstown Road exit they used. How did they go on the record?
We submitted a report to DCAL via the STG, which was supplementary to the STG report, and the rationale for that was because we're conscious that a lot of the conversation up to that point in time had involved matters inside of the stadium, but ultimately a lot of the responsibility.
What was the date that that report was submitted to DCAL?
I don't know the exact date, but it would have been October 2013.
Would it be possible for us to get a copy of that report?
I believe you have a copy of it.
Do we have a copy of the police report?
No? Yes, by all means.
Because I have to say it is one of the big game changers in this, that Mr Southern's submission was that things had been relatively tickety-boo up until October, when out of left field this idea 100% non-utilisation of Andersonstown Road came and changed the whole dynamic. So your report, the PSNI report, is fundamental to this issue?
The PSNI report was submitted at that time, but as my colleague has already mentioned, this wasn't something new. This had already been mentioned significantly prior to October 2013, and Paul, you may wish to add in respect of that.
From March.
Hold on a tick. I've got a certain amount of time. So do the PSNI stand by the statement that you made earlier that we cannot see how persons within the stadium could reach a place of safety or reasonable safety within 8 minutes time frame if the Andersonstown Road exits were unavailable for any reason?
That's correct.
And do you accept that the likelihood of that is low, but that it is not unforeseeable?
That's correct.
So if we then moved on to some issues to do with what I put to Mr Southern, we talked about the use of the pitch, and Mr Southern comes up and says part of the guidance it says other than in a major one-off incident contingency. So Mr Southern on the record on page 46 is saying that there is something, it might be to do with the issue that was brought up by the fire officer.
Chair, if I may, I think it's important that we get the opportunity to reflect our views. It was mentioned here in terms of the PSNI raising that issue in October 2013. I do feel it's important for my colleague to reiterate that that issue was raised significantly before
Go
October
ahead.
13.
Yes, go ahead, Mr Scott.
Yes, we've been sending, orally we've been asking DCAL, expressing our concerns since December 2012, and in writing since March.
Scott, I'd like to ask you a few questions. I am convinced, for the record, that you've been sending records, so I'm on board with that. but I've got new information coming from two officers here, which I would like to follow, and then I will come to you for your bit, if you don't mind.
No problem.
Just since Ms McNally came in, I'd also like just to clear up one bit before I come back. Can you just state categorically for the record, because allegations were made that Mr Ryan Feeney had put pressure upon the STG or the police, or in some way, is there any knowledge from the PSNI of any pressure being brought to bear by the GAA to change policing positions in these matters?
I can assure you that I was involved in conversations with the GA, including Mr Feeney, and at no stage was there pressure exerted on the PSNI. Those conversations were to ask for clarification on a number of points. Clarification
and helpful discussion and whatever. Okay, that's useful. Can I ask, let me just see if I just get my notes here. Can I just, Jeremy, the STG cannot see how emergency evacuation could be achieved in safety and in compliance with the recognised guidance. Is that your position, that you cannot see? It's not Mr Scott or Laura, actually, this is your opinion?
Yeah, we've never received any of the documents we've been asking for, I think, since spring 2013. I look at them independently. They're on a share tree. I get to download them. I get to see them. I haven't seen anything, so unfortunately I can't say that we're satisfied that the emergency evacuation arrangements at the proposed development are sound.
So, one of the points, and I'm happy for whoever wants to answer this, Mr Scott, but it may be the team, one of the points that I put to Mr Southern, because he repeated it on a number of occasions, but I did put to him, I said, on the issue that you brought up, you've mentioned repeatedly, and I happen to agree with you, is it the fact that the absence of the Andersonstown Road 100% is a showstopper, a fundamental change that puts the whole prospect of delivery of the project in jeopardy. Do you agree with his statement? This is Carl Southern's statement.
Well, it's not necessarily a showstopper. You can either reduce the capacity. You might be able to get some additional capacity by extending the concourses. And the other option would be to create additional exits, although that would involve the purchase and demolition of homes in the area.
So I put it to Mr Southern, but if it was a relevant factor, that is the non-availability of the Andersonstown Road 100%,
yeah,
that it fundamentally changes the viability, not necessarily that you can build a stadium, but the viability of the Casement Park project. And he replied, yes, it does.
Yeah. Well, again, it depends on, must there be 38,000? Will a smaller number suffice? Could we get additional exits? And we can get some additional increase in capacity by maximising the design of the concourses, although I would believe there's not a lot of slack
so
there.
Let me ask you about that then. Mike Trice brought forward a position that said that you can evacuate to a place of safety, and he said that the concourse could be a place of safety. But it was pointed out to him by me that, maybe not by him actually, but would it be the case that that is only the case if you can get free movement from that place of safety?
You must be able to move at 82 persons per metre per minute.
So the position that the concourse, even though it is a fire-safe place,
yes,
because you've got no movement out of that area, that negates that issue.
Absolutely, that would be my understanding of the guidance.
Could you also clarify for me, I think you have it in your notes, that people were saying about the use of the pitch for another stadium, but that the pitch could be utilised, but that pitch had got a direct access to a place of safety?
There's several issues there. First of all, at that time, Windsor Park was an existing stadium, and there are relaxations for existing stadia. But you can, and going by the red guide, which was the guidance operative at that time, bear in mind this was a number of years ago, yes, the proposals of the Irish Football Association / Linfield Football Club were in accordance with the guidance at that time, and thus the council issued the safety certificate to reflect that.
So you would agree with Mr Southern when I put it to Mr Southern that reservoirs, whether they be the pitch or the concourse, can be used, but only if they are part of a secondary movement. In other words, you can get movement through, and that if there is no movement through the Ansonstown Road, that they cannot be used.
You can only use the concourses in getting to a place of safety. And the guidance is very clear that for new build, we cannot use the pitch in assessing the capacity or the safe capacity of the stadium.
Okay, can I just check a couple of points around through? Jeremy, just to confirm your statement that the writing of the emergency evacuation plan rests with the stadium ground operator?
It does, and we're very, very keen to work with any event organiser, be they soccer, stroke football, cricket, rugby, whoever. We're very keen to do that, to assist them in that smooth transition. We take care of people, as I said earlier, once they're in a place of safety. But they really do need to have a process and a build, quite frankly, that will allow people to get there.
Laura, can I ask you, were any venues in Great Britain with an emergency evacuation time of greater than 8 minutes ever identified?
No, but we were speaking to them about the grounds that are designated under the Act, which is the 75 Act. So they were able to come back to us and confirm that there were no grounds within England and Wales that had a greater than 8 emergency evacuation.
You refer to the tennis report in the 29 minutes if there's zero availability, but that report, I think it's page 195 in Paul's bundle, also refers to the fact that there is calculations done when there's only 50% availability or 25% availability. Can you tell me what the outworkings of those would be?
Sorry, 151, did you say?
195, I think
sorry,
it is.
195.
From memory.
So just a 50%. That would
Yeah, what they did was they went through the different scenarios as to if 50% of the exits onto Andersonstown Road were available and worked out how long it would take people to get out in that eventuality.
So
and then went through 25%, you know, they worked
So
through
can I ask you, although it is low probability for 100%, is there an increasing probability for 75%, 50%, 25%?
There's no real difference in that matter now.
It also concludes that if the southwest corner is stairs are unavailable, that is over the 8 minutes.
Yeah.
So
There's various different scenarios that would still bring you over that 8-minute period of time.
a couple of points for the record. I want to move on to Paul then, because there's great great store being put by your email of the 19th. The department argued that you used the same language in that you've used in a previous report for Windsor and Ravenhill, which is to say that there is the potential that the S&P factors will be one. Can you tell me why you wrote that letter? Why did you write that there is a potential when you clearly had some concerns?
Right. Well, bear in mind the P and the S factors come after the safe capacity is assessed, and if the as it looked like the various dimensions of stairs, handrails, etc., and if they all were in accordance with recognised guidance, then we really should be able to get a P and an S factor of 1. But a P and an S factor of 1 on the exiting.
But this was the date in your bundle that you've helpfully put for us. This was the date upon which planning permission was submitted on the 19th. So you wrote your email at 10:46,
yes,
saying that it was potential, and the department relied upon your email.
Amazing. We also went on to say about the management plan in particular should detail and contain suitable emergency exiting arrangements. It should actually have been emergency evacuation arrangements. So we're saying, yes, we agree. We're now in consensus with entrancing. We're now in consensus with viewing. We're now in consensus with exiting. But please show us the emergency exiting.
Mr McGurk has said here on the official record that the programme director, Mr Malloy, will have needed your sign-off to go forward for planning.
Yeah.
And the emails actually that were sent before that have drawn it to your attention. The email on the 14th actually says, look, we need to have some planning is scheduled. This is email 14th of June.
Yeah.
planning is scheduled for the 19th of June.
Yeah.
Could you please have a response? So you would have known that the department were going to rely upon your statement.
We also knew that the permanent secretary was saying unless we had sign off, they wouldn't go. And we kept saying, and if you look at my email dated the 22nd of May, the 30th of April, my apologies.
And I'm looking at the email of the 22nd of May and a handwritten note on the 30th of April.
That's right. This email and the handwritten note, which was essentially a phone call which I had made to Mr Southern. And we're saying, look, show us the emergency exiting arrangements, the emergency evacuation arrangements.
Okay, I'm looking at a document in your pack, page 57. It says Casement Park Stadium redevelopment. It's got a number, it's annotations on that.
57. And what are we saying?
So can I ask you, it says reviewed on the 4th of the 6th, 13, and based on information of it. When was that? You know, this is the draft report, which you obviously got. And when was that provided to whoever it was provided to?
I believe it was September, but I would need to check that.
So why was it delayed, given that you had written it, you have it reviewed on the 4th of June? Why is it not given to the department at that time?
Because we were saying we can't say anything about emergency exiting. Please give us the documentation, then we can complete the assessment. And we were told, yes, we're working on that. We waited for it, then we were said, no, you must provide us the report. So we did provide the report, albeit incomplete.
Okay, let me just conclude. Let me conclude by saying, I'm just concluding, Chair. Let me say to you, I find your evidence compelling. I find the evidence of all four of you really useful. Those people that try and argue that there is not a significant emergency exiting problem around the Casement Park are simply wrong. I do believe that you were not listened to. I think that you should be listened to. I think that people should be working with you. They should find a way to go out, and we all want to see a stadium built. And I think it will be built if people address the issue properly. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you very much.
Now, at this point, we've got about 40 minutes odd left. What I'm going to do, I have just two questions I want to ask. Then we'll go back round again. It's about 3 minutes for everybody. Basil's already used up his 3 there at Glasgow.
You can't bring in a rule retrospectively.
Chairman's authority. Now, everybody will get a chance. I'll go around the same order as previously in terms of questions, because everybody was in, and we'll do them in that same order again, but give everybody 3 minutes. Just if I could ask, and you may not be able to answer this, Mr. Scott, and I can understand it, but you might be able to, because you seem to know the red guides and green guides and all these guides inside out. In terms of the green guide, the GB one, when Mr. Daly was in with the GA, he said, as the terms of the reference of the inquiry place a high premium on establishing whether the stadium has been designed to a safe standard, I want to introduce Mike Trice, who's the principal architect for the Casement Park project, and who is a significant contributor to the development of the 5th edition of the Green Guide, an expert with international experience in safe stadium design and delivery. When they were developing the Green Guide, you may not know this, but on the other hand you might well, when they were developing the Green Guide, was Mr. Trice on the oversight group or the steering group or something?
No, it was the Green Guide. The author, the main person steering the project was a gentleman called Jim Froggatt, who was an inspector at the time. He has subsequently retired, but he was an inspector with the Football Licensing Authority, who subsequently have gone through a metamorphosis and now are the Sports Ground Safety Authority. So Jim was the as I understand it, was the mainstay. The other inspectors who work, and they all, at the Safe Sports Grounds Authority, the inspectors all have their own specialities. They're structural engineers, fire engineers, etc., etc. These people are world-renowned people. So they then came to a draft process, and they went out to something like 700, just shy of 700 organisations who they would like to contribute. One of those was a company called HOK Sport, who are now Populous.
Okay.
And my understanding is that as a whole, Populous or HOK Sport, as they were then, made a number of submissions, I think just over 20, of variations they would like to the wording. And out of that, maybe a third of those were taken on board by the Football Licensing Authority at that time.
Okay, that clarifies it. So he was not employed by the group that developed.
Not as I understand it.
It was developed by the Safe Grounds, Sports Ground Safety or whatever authority. He was on the consultation list along with hundreds of other people.
Yes.
Just to get clarity around, because it said that he made a significant, he was a significant contributor.
I could confirm that, Chair. I can get back to the Safe Sports Grounds Authority and find out.
If you could find out, that would be
how
helpful.
much.
If you get an email
my
from
understanding is there were over 20 comments made by the HOK group, but bear in mind, HOK is a big, big organisation.
Yes.
It is not a one-man band. It is a big, big organisation.
So he was a consultee, really? Okay. That's fine. Second thing I want to ask, I've lost my book over here. Oh yes, to the police. The police report that I apologise, I had to leave there. That was mentioned. Will you be able to send us on a copy?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah. The meeting with again to Mr. Scott and possibly Laura. In 2014, there was mention of meetings with DCAL, at which demolition of houses was talked about.
That's right.
But it wasn't to be discussed externally.
Yes.
Or at the STG.
So the STG would get proposals from DCAL, but these were not formal proposals. These were, if you like, scoping exercises. Right. What would be needed, in our view, to get the capacity up.
Who was conscious in 2014 at those meetings? Who was present and therefore would have known that there was discussion of?
There would have been myself and Nick Harkness would have been there representing Sport Northern Ireland. There would have been Kieran McGurk and Carl Southern representing DCAL. And at one of the meetings, Antoinette McKeown would have been present.
There was two meetings that there was discussion of demolition.
There were at least
of
two. I believe there was also a third involving just myself and Kieran McGurk. I can certainly, Chair, get you those documents.
Thank you very much. We'll start again around the room then. William Humphrey.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you very much for your
3 minutes.
persistence and endurance. In terms of the Sports Ground Safety Authority, I have proposed that they be brought in front of this committee in the autumn.
As the authors of the Green Guide and with the Red Guide based on the 4th edition.
Can I ask, did anyone in, because I put this to GA and they said no, did anyone in Sport NI ever suggest to the GA that they should seek this organisation's professional guidance?
Yes, Antoinette McKeown and Nick Harkness met the GAA, I believe, in October 14 on a variety of matters, but one of the matters was that the STG would, if you like, do a quality assurance on the proposals. And I believe, I wasn't at the meeting, but I was advised that the GAA were broadly in agreement with the content of the meeting, of which this was only part. So minutes were sent by, I think, Mr. Harkness, and the letter came back to Ms. McKeown to say that the GAA had not agreed to the Safe Sports Grounds Authority reviewing the drawings, but and they would recontact Ms. McKeown. But I do not believe that had been done. At least I've not been told that had been done.
That's okay, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Rosalie McCorley.
Margaret Carley, and thanks again. Can I just go back to and ask you, in terms of sponsor board, Nick Harkness was representing Sport NI then?
No, it was the chief executive. In the absence of the chief executive, Mr. Harkness, and on occasions Mr. Sloan represented Sport NI.
So they didn't always, but
no,
they did sometimes?
It was the chief executive, but if the chief executive was attending other meetings or was on leave or whatever, she would have asked one of the directors to have substituted in for herself.
Okay, and during those times, would you have been given advice to any of them about your concerns?
No, other than prior to the meeting of December 2013, I was not asked, other than on one occasion when Mr Sloan was deputising, and I gave him a written, really one page of where we were with 3 stadia. However, Mr Sloan advised me that he'd been instructed he was only to go and listen.
So did it surprise you then that those concerns weren't raised
Yes.
at that level?
Yes, and indeed I then tried to get the minutes of the sponsor board, and I had to jump through hoops. I was initially told that Sport NI didn't have them. Then I was told that Decal wouldn't release them. And it was only about maybe 3 weeks ago that I was given access to those documents. And to be honest, with all else that's going on, other than a quick sift through them, I haven't read them. But any that I have read, I could see no reference to safety being raised.
Can I ask about the just about the Anderson Road closure again? At one point,
Please be quick, only
it was partial closure, and then at a point it
Yes.
changed to full closure.
Yes.
How did that? What brought that about? That change.
This was a document given to us by Tenos, who are the fire engineers for the Buckingham Group, and they came up with those scenarios. Although, as Laura has alluded to, if there's a fire on a house to the front of the Casement Park, it's hard to see how half, it would generally be all or nothing. I'm not saying there wouldn't be times whenever people could go out half or a quarter or even 3/4.
Can I just ask Anthony?
Sorry, just Rosie, play the times up.
But I was shortchanged the first time. Just let me have 1 minute.
No, I think you actually got your
I
full
was.
time.
I didn't.
Gordon
I
done.
didn't.
Gordon?
Okay.
I was shortchanged. For the record.
What? 9 minutes for the record.
I was, wasn't I?
No, you were given an extra minute.
You got an extra minute the last time. Been carefully checked. So, Gordon?
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks very much, panel, again for coming in and dealing with this in such a professional manner. The Minister recently indicated to the Assembly that new plans were in progress for Casement Park. Paul, are you aware of those plans, or any of you been made aware of them?
And my director, Nick Harkness, has asked Rory Muskelly. We really should be involved sooner rather than later, but no, nothing.
Nothing to date. Just finally, this proposal is for 38,000. How do you see that proposal relatively in scale and numbers of people?
38,000 is a big stadium. Now, there are bigger in GB.
But in Northern Ireland wise, how do you see that?
It's more than twice the size of the next biggest, which would be either the National Football Stadium or the Rugby Football Grounds. It's more than twice the size.
So, obviously, the Odyssey, for example, how does it compare with that?
The Odyssey would have a viewing capacity at a concert, and that is whenever they're using the floor area for standing of about 10,000, give or take.
38,000.
But for the decking around the Odyssey, you're looking at about 5,000, just shy of 5,000. So it's going to be.
So in relation to public events and venues, venue for public events, this is a new scale. We're moving on to new ground here in relation to capacity at 38,000. So there are major issues, I would contend, to be addressed in relation to.
It's going to be a challenging figure.
The whole management of people, car parking, and all the environmental aspects that there are in relation to this project.
Yeah.
You would recognise those as major issues.
It will be very challenging.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Chair.
Cathal, question.
Just the first statement that Carl Sutherland made last week, and it's not a question. He said all safety and technical recommendations are under Paul Scott, and he had every opportunity to comment on all aspects of safety, including accident strategy. And that was a statement from Mr. Sutherland. But I just want to.
Sorry, I think if we throw a statement, somebody we need to let them respond. So if you get time.
Well, it'll be Hansard, Chair, and I don't. It will be Hansard, I'm sure.
It will be Hansard, but it was Hansard last week, Mr. Scott.
So what was the question there, sir?
There isn't a question. There wasn't a question.
All right, okay. Well,
it's just a statement.
Yeah.
And we did, and we communicated our concerns to Mr. Sutherland.
But he said you had every opportunity to comment.
And we did.
Yeah.
I think he was referring to the outline business case, though, and I think you've already answered that question to how you were brought in just to discuss.
Well, can you answer then, with all of this safeguards in there, why Sport NI, and particularly in reference to the purchase of additional land or indeed housing, and we've seen newspaper reports of some upwards of 16 houses being proposed. Why then Sport NI would approve the development monies of 4.4 million public spend on casement if there hadn't been a change of mind since 2014?
I would not have been involved in the finances. I just don't know.
Sport NI were.
But all I can say is I joined the process in 2009. I raised my concerns during the drafting of the business case, and then whenever the design proposals came out, I then rejoined the process.
Okay, and can I ask the PSNI, just in terms of any emergency action, surely there has to be a comprehensive event management plan as well drawn up. And in what circumstances could you see that the situation as being outlined here could develop?
It's as mentioned, and we've discussed this with the GAA directly as well. We accept that the likelihood of closing the entire Anderstown is low. However, if we do have to do so, the impact of that will be high, both in terms of local residents, but equally those attending the stadium. So we still welcome the opportunity to tabletop exercise, do whatever we need to do in terms of those emergency evacuation procedures, but as yet we haven't been provided those.
And would you consider examining the Aviva, which can exit that into the one?
That's a matter for the entire group.
Yeah, but surely it's relevant to the...
If the chair can...
It's relevant to
We will
everything.
endeavour to get the drawings of the Aviva and provide comment for you.
Okay. Just to record, it was mentioned of 16 houses in some newspaper
I
report.
think I was in Sunday Life, was it this week?
Right, okay.
I didn't see it.
I'll not comment on that.
No, I won't either.
Yes. Just to maybe, it's outside Mr McNally's area, but there was a report on the news about two people were up in court or something in relation to the accident on the was it the accident on Malone Road? Malone. On the Malone Road where there was a student killed. I think there were two people up in court. Basically. Can you recall how long Malone Road was closed on that occasion?
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't. I know it was a number of hours, but I can't. Number of hours, but I can't remember exact detail.
Just it struck me this morning when I saw it in the news and we were talking this about road closures. Just the sort of thing.
A fatal road traffic collision will most likely see a main road closed for a number of hours. Obviously, we'll endeavour to open it as soon as possible, but we'll have to be conscious of the
investigation.
Sensitivities in the investigation.
Okay, thank you. Oliver McMullen.
Yes, Chairman. On February 2012, you worked along closely with Sports NI.
I was employed by Sports NI.
Aye,
Yeah.
2012. There was an offer of 4.4 million.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it.
You don't know anything about that either?
No, as I said, I would have been involved in the business
let me
case
tell you, I have my time limited here.
Okay.
That 4.4 million was triggered for the costs. Now, in that letter offer, there was no recommendations for emergency exiting. Could you comment on that?
No.
No.
I was involved, as I say, in 2009, whenever and made comments with regard to the drafting of the business case. I didn't rejoin the process until 2012, whenever the initial concept drawings.
Who was the head of safety compliance
at that time?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the head of safety compliance had the chance then to flag up safety issues before that letter, when that letter offer was going out. 4.4 million.
Yeah.
And nothing was raised.
No, but I'm unaware of the 4.4
Oh,
million.
you're unaware of 4.4 million was released? And you're the safety compliance officer?
I'm the head of this. Yes. That's,
We deal with safety. We work with the safety compliance team and deal with safety.
Sorry, Oliver, with respect. Sorry, Oliver, with respect to the chair.
I would say respect.
Sorry, I'm asking just please. Please be respectful to the lady if she speaks.
I did say respect to her.
Yes, well then, give her a chance to answer.
Well, the lady shouldn't interrupt it with respect. Look, I was talking to the gentleman. Now,
Chair, please.
You were the safety technical officer.
I was head of the safety.
The head of safety group, beg your pardon.
That's right.
At the time, the 4.4 million was offered, and there was no issue raised about.
I was unaware until you had mentioned the 4.4 million. I have been unaware of that figure. As I said, I gave evidence In 2009, I rejoined the process to assess drawings. I have no remit with regard finances.
Can I ask, well, I'm sorry, I can't.
All right, your time's up now,
Can't
thank
see your
you.
name. Sorry, I can't see the gentleman's name here.
Yeah, but your time is up, actually, Mr.
No,
McNulty.
this is very relevant here.
Sorry, Mr. McMullen, everybody got the same time. Thank you. Next person then is Dominic Bradley.
Thank you, Chair. Hello again. I get the impression that there was a communications issue around some of these problems between the various people involved. For example, I mentioned earlier on that Mr. Sutherland, Mr. Malloy and Mr. McCork said there were no red flags. You said there were. On reflection, do you think there was confusion around the terminology that was used? I get the impression from reading some of the material that some people took exiting to mean exiting in an emergency situation. Some people took it just to mean exiting under normal circumstances. And then we have the other term, emergency evacuation. On reflection, do you think that there was a lack of clarity in terminology and that may have led to the issues being confused?
No, well, we were going by the guidance, which is Decal and Sport Northern Ireland guidance. I would have expected Mr. Malloy, Mr. Miskelly and Mr. Southern all to be aware of that. It's very, very clear in the documentation, although they have subsequently said that they are not experts in the Green Guide. However, we were their technical experts, but they've decided to basically ignore us.
Well, I didn't get the impression from what they said in evidence that they thought they were ignoring you, but that their view was that you had not raised these issues to the extent that they would be red flag issues.
Dossier of emails to them, phone calls, meetings, and indeed the meeting I referred to earlier in the Causeway Exchange. There is no way on this earth they could not have known of the problems. And you know, and the phone calls and the tenor of the language, they did understand. They didn't. They wanted to ignore the problem.
It seems that there was some sort of communication problem.
We believe that we acted appropriately. We notified the department appropriately on many levels. And our problem is we haven't had any, even getting the terms of reference, getting the minutes of the meeting at Causeway Exchange, getting minutes of the steering group meetings. We request, but we don't get. We share with the department. We need them to reciprocate.
That sounds to me like communication problems.
Okay.
Somebody can't hear.
Next person is Karen McKevin.
Thank you, Chair. And I had a minute left from a previous one.
You're going to call on that?
But it's fair and square.
Use it, saying that.
A wee bit of tongue
Use it or lose it.
Yeah. Oh God, I've forgotten your name. Sorry.
I want to know who you are.
Could you describe briefly what it would take for a road to be closed 100%, you know, to traffic?
It's as it's been previously mentioned. There are a number of scenarios. There's no definite and there's no absolute. One road traffic collision isn't the same as another. One crime scene isn't the same as another. One terrorist attack isn't the same as another. But any and or all of those could close the Andersonstown Road in its entirety. However, the likelihood of those is significantly low.
Do footpaths be closed 100% if the road's closed?
And under what scenario?
Well, say there was a house fire and the wind was blowing. I'm sure this is the way you have to think, because it was mentioned by Paul and that there was a fire right outside the Andersonstown entrance and the wind was blowing towards the traffic rather than the entrance. So you closed it to the traffic because obviously they might be able to see through smoke or whatever, and maybe for the emergency service to go through. But the footpaths could still be in use. I'm only trying to... Does that be put into the equation, or does it just...
I think every circumstance is treated in its own merits. Sometimes if there's a need to close footpath roads and any access, that's what we'll do.
So footpaths don't be ruled out if in a Whatever scenario.
Every circumstance
Every
is on
circumstance.
its own merits.
Okay, thank you for that. Just was in my head. I didn't know whether a road would close totally to them, but it doesn't. Okay. Paul, on page 55 of your bundle, meeting notes provided for the 5th of September, and the notes are structured, well, I suppose they're under various important headings, one of which is exiting. There's no heading for emergency exiting.
No, there's not.
In fact, there's no reference at all to emergency exiting in the meeting notes at all.
That's right.
However,
Because
the relative safety is mentioned.
We haven't had anything to comment on. But there are other emails in and around that time where we're saying, please show us the emergency exiting. We were
Would you
working.
accept that it would be, therefore, you would assume that the heading relates to all types of exiting? Or
Anyone who's familiar with the red guide or the green guide should not assume that. No. A lay person, perhaps, but anyone who has competence in the green guide or the red guide would be aware. It does say, and we quoted earlier, there is a difference in exiting time and emergency evacuation.
but when you're a lay person looking at it, it would seem from the notes that the vital issue of emergency exiting was dropped.
But this is
or resolved at this stage, or if they weren't, why not? Why weren't they jumping off the page? Do you know, like, I'm only, I don't know about a red agreement. I've heard plenty about them, and I think I'll be an expert by the time all of this is over.
Give you a job, and
you know, and there might be a one-man show, but I mean, like, it's
because
I'm only trying to.
Because this is going, the recipient of this is the technical manager at DECAL, and he is the expert, or should be expert in the contents of the red guide and the green guide. I accept that a lay person wouldn't necessarily pick it up, but certainly an architect specialising in sport should most certainly pick that up.
But why was it not red flagged? Do you know, in emails and stuff
Well,
then?
in this particular one it isn't, but there are numerous others before and after where it is red flagged.
Okay.
I mean, every email, could we have done things slightly different? With hindsight, you always could, yes.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so I have one more. I've still time. And I want to keep it specific to the end.
Sure.
In your opinion, did you find today's meeting robust or?
I thought it was very businesslike. I thought it was fine.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Okay. Same for all of you? Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Leslie Cree.
Mr. Chair, again, finally, on the table of papers today, there's your email to Paul, from yourself, Paul, to Carl, 19th of June.
19th of June, yes.
2013. Now, that's very important.
Yes.
A long time ago. And in fact, about line 8 there, you make it quite clear. The management plan in particular should detail and contain suitable emergency exiting arrangements.
Yes.
Did you ever get a reply to that email?
Dear me.
It doesn't seem to be here. I thought it would have come with it, yeah.
No, that question was not answered because I see them. Sorry, I would need to look at the full. I would really need to look at the full list of emails.
Can you think of any reason why it wouldn't be answered, apart from wanting to avoid the issue?
Well, we have asked for this and many other emails too, and we still await the emergency exiting arrangements.
So there's a reluctance on someone's part, Chair, to address that?
I think that is a fairly accurate observation. I just want to ask one question, and it's this. Clearly, within the architecture, dealing with stadia, and we're not just looking at what happened or didn't happen or should have happened, but also what can we learn from this? Clearly, there are people in your organisation and in Belfast City Council, and we heard from Valerie Brown, and she knows her stuff in that regard.
Absolutely.
And you clearly know a lot, both Laura and Paul, in regard to the guides and how they should be applied and so on. But if there are others at what is effectively the next, or a couple of tiers up maybe, however it is, people who are programme managers and directors, there's clearly huge expertise at your level. You know that, the ins and outs of this. Would it not be, would you agree with me that it would be good to have people at the next level up who also knew something more than just a very rudimentary knowledge of the guide?
Mr. Harkness would have a reasonable...
No, not necessarily. I'm talking about the people like Mr. Malloy,
Yes.
Mr.
Absolutely.
McGurk and so on.
And we would be more than happy to speak to the people at DECAL and talk them through the red guide and the green guide and the
It was just that when we questioned them, a number of them said, well, actually, I'm not an expert in that field. They particularly Mr. Malloy.
Yeah.
And yet he was the programme manager. Or director. I think there's a lesson maybe as a committee we ought to look at about ensuring that there is expertise, not just at the technical level, but at that other level. And the second thing is this, there were questions asked in regard to letters of offer, 4 point whatever million pound, whatever.
4.4.
4 million. You're not financial people.
No.
Your role is purely technical.
Chair, it's not about finance.
Sorry, just if I could ask a question, please. Your role is purely technical, is that correct?
Purely technical, but we would have a good knowledge of what seats would cost in a stadium.
Things like that, yes, understand.
But with
Appreciate
regard to
that.
business cases, we have people in Sport and I
Who specialise.
deal with that matter.
I think that's what I was trying to say, was basically we are the safety compliance unit. We deal with technical issues and safety. We're not accountants.
Yeah.
We're not auditors.
Yeah.
We don't review business cases. That does not fall within our remit. There's other people within the organisation that's their role.
Okay.
We used the term last time. We are sort of anoraks that deal with it.
And nobody disputed that. Could I just ask finally, if there's anything else any of you want to say, or are you
I would like to ask a question.
I haven't got him yet.
What is the question, boss?
Chair, the question is referring to an email from Carl Sullivan on the 17th of June 2014, page 176 of your pack. Can I just get the timeline correct? I'm just looking at these latter emerging requirements are significant and have imposed
Sorry, what paragraph is this in?
This is the fourth.
Oh, yeah, sorry, the paragraph for the last, right.
Right. So can I just ask you, just for the timeline first of all, is that 1 year after?
That's a year after. Venue in Kennedy Way. Where he's basically, I think, saying that the issue of the closure of the Andersonstown Road has only been raised recently, whereas it's always been an issue.
Well, I just wanted to refer to the fact that there's a police report from the year before, and Minister, I just want to know why is that coming in 1 year later saying that these are emerging requirements?
Could I say that at many meetings, over a long period of time, the meeting would always be opened by decals saying, why are we only hearing about this now? And we kept referring them back to back to March, April 13. And it can't be a new thing every month on month.
And final point, just for clarity then, is that you and the STG, and it is you as a collective actually that I'm looking for, are confident and completely comfortable that you have raised issues of concern about the emergency exiting plan at all times on a continuous basis.
Yes.
Yes? Yes.
Thank you. Thanks very much indeed for your presentation. It's been helpful, the amount of information that we're getting, and we're working our way through it, and we appreciate that's been extremely useful today. We'll wait till the gentlemen leave, and then we'll continue our...
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Chair, members.
Okay, I take it back.
They're in our board.
We'll do it together.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That's been helpful there. Are there any further points that you want to raise, or do we take a break for lunch now? Give us maybe, if the Minister's a few minutes early, it would enable us to get started before 2 o'clock. She has to be away at 3:30.
Idea.
Okay, thank you. We'll take it.
There's a couple of points. Was there any points? No. They'd raised their hands before. No.
All right, okay. We'll take a break now, and then we'll, as soon as the Minister's available, we'll maybe be able to start a few minutes before 2 o'clock. Thank you.
30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30.